Sometimes in history, there's this magic moment. Somebody appears on the scene and everything changes.
I am with you.
We've never seen anything like this.
I will fight for you.
This was a man who's met his destiny.
And I will win for you.
He said he was saved by God in order to make America great again.
His victory was the greatest comeback of all time.
You're watching history, so buckle up.
I don't think the American people have ever seen this before. A government that has moved this quickly and a president that has done so much when it comes to the border and energy and major investments from other countries. It's like warp speed.
47's on a hot streak, bringing head-snapping change to Washington, overwhelming the system with a volcanic eruption of action. Trump has a mandate from the people, and he's using it, and they're just getting started.
President Trump said on the campaign trail, success will be my retribution.
Despite the best efforts of those who would try to censor us, silence us, break us, destroy us, Americans are today a proud, free, sovereign, and independent nation that will always be free. We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do what I'm doing.
America's back, common sense is back. He is keeping his promise to you, the American people.
Inflation is down, growth is up.
The numbers don't lie. The economy is soaring.
Lowest gas prices in 4 years.
And record tariff revenue.
The USA is on a roll, culminating in the signing of the One Big Beautiful Bill on July 4th.
The Trump economic golden age is full steam ahead.
America is back, thanks to the courage of President Trump, thanks to the leadership of his amazing cabinet, and thanks, of course, to our brave men and women in the United States military.
This is a message to the rest of the world. The days of ripping off America and Americans are officially over.
Between the attacks on Iran's nuke site and the Maduro operation, the U.S. military recruitment at an all-time high.
This president will go down in history as a peacemaking president.
Peace through strength. America's in charge.
And he's just got one filter, and that is America first.
Whatever they're doing, it's working. Zero illegal crossing, drug cartels frustrated, less crime.
We have the most secure border in the history of this nation. If you think we're doing good now, you just wait till this coming year.
The president isn't taking his foot off the gas in 2026.
It's a new year. The stock markets are already making new record highs. The Trump archive are a series of near impossible feats.
As for the next year, the American people have so much to look forward to. The president will continue to build off of his historic accomplishments.
2025 is setting the table, but the banquet's going to be in 2026.
This is the golden age coming.
He says, make America great again because every American is invited.
My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future because the golden age of America has only just begun.
What up, fools? Today's word, arrest. Arrest, arrest, arrest. What do you guys think? Arrest, arrest, arrest. So, there are a boat ton of arrests that are happening. Yep, that's plural in arrest. So we have multiple raids. Remember yesterday when I was showing you guys all those Black Hawks? And that didn't make sense why they were in certain areas. Well, looks like they're picking people up. So here is one that is about ready to happen. Because President Trump just come out and he said this, about 50 minutes ago? He believes that Governor Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar are complicit in Somali fraud. Both of them need to be prosecuted. There is no way that much fraud could have went through without them noticing. So they already know. They already have the goods. Now here is the next one. Tulsi Gabbard just confirmed she was physically in Fulton County when the FBI moved the 2020 election records. She said she was there at the request of the president to observe an action that had been long awaiting. A judge has approved the warrant. The FBI moved in, and now Democrats are demanding answers. So you had Blackhawks in Louisiana. Well, I think there's somebody in Louisiana that just got indicted. Let's see, let me get to where, alright. So, this is what I received about an hour and a half ago. Multiple arrests have been made in a sting of 10 FBI a string of FBI raids across Virginia connected to influential Democratic Senate President pro tem Luis Lucas. SWAT teams came in, weapons drawn, and had people come out with their hands up. The marijuana dispensary was raided right next to and along with her office. The Abigail Spanberger ally is likely cooked. Let's see. So they've conducted 10 raids just in Virginia within the last hour. Let's see. Alright, so I received this last night that a state rep out of Maine, Somalian-born Dika Dalek, announced her number one goal in office is to surge taxpayers' money from America to Somalia. Hopefully we will be able to help out our former country, Somalia, by embezzlement. Now, she was caught on a wiretap. she's fucked. And then this morning, the Department of War announced that they are in the process of withdrawing troops from Germany. The first batch of 5,000 have already departed. And I think we're witnessing the collapse of NATO. Oops. Let's see. And then here's another investigation that I think Todd Blanche has pushed forward. Planned Parenthood is currently being investigated and indictments sought over allegations involving harvesting and sale of baby organs. Where is... Ilhan Omar is now... let's see. I missed my spot here. Ilhan Omar did not turn over records that were requested in a fraud investigation to the state legislature. So now they're looking at state charges on her as well. There was a huge arrest. Let's see. Okay, that's Ilhan Omar again. Oh, there was something. So, there's a whistleblower that came forward to Tulsi Gabbard, where they have documented proof that allegedly Barack Obama had stolen a gentleman's Social Security number when he changed his name out of, I believe, the state of Connecticut. And so she is turning that over to the... I'm telling you, all this shit's gonna happen at once. Schmitty! You know, I keep seeing all of these Kamala Harris AOC 2028. And they're all coming from what you would believe to be Republicans. I have a feeling, I don't know, something is off with this presidential election. I want to check something. So apparently, I was telling you guys yesterday, we got approved for monetization on YouTube. And we're supposed to be able to get like super chats and stuff like that. I don't know. I was messing around with it. Let me I'm going to go in here and see if I set everything up right. And I can't confirm this, but I was told early this morning, like 3 o'clock. Ooh, we may have, hold on one second, may have video of this.
They snatched Guido is down.
This is coming from Ictamel, which
And he was arrested. I forgot that.
he's a good dude. But I'm trying to find
paraphrasing. Like trespassing? Wasn't trespassing?
where he's getting this news feed from.
Yeah, they said he ran out of food and water.
He's a good dude, but I don't want to use his.
How you gonna go to war and prepare for no food and water? He was arrested for
without
unauthorized climb and occupation of the bridge. Basically trespassed.
See if we can get this video.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Naya, I can hear you. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, cool.
Okay, I think we may have it. Oh my God, these people are going nuts because people are out there reporting this shit.
You guys, after years of marriage, this right here is absolute magic. Blue Chew Gold is the only treatment combining 4 powerful ingredients that target both arousal and the body. Highly recommend this, you guys, and it's delivered right.
Give me 1 second and I will get this video up.
Hi, Ed. Doing well. How are you? Hi, Ed. Doing well. How are you?
So this is from Fox 5. I'll get it switched over here in a second. Soon as this loads and I can get rid of their chat shit.
Thank you. Copy that. Thanks. Do we have to worry about one of them coming up during the live shot?
Maybe.
I'm wondering if we have to worry about someone coming up during the live shot, so...
I'm telling you, these people are going to go batshit crazy.
No, we just got some people who were not very happy that we're here.
Okay.
But there's nothing we can do about that, so we'll roll with it.
So this is the raid that's currently happening in Virginia. The weed shop and this Democrat's office. So,
oh no, we'll if someone tries coming, I've had lots of photobomber attempts before. I'll just move out of the way. We'll do our best to not let them get on camera.
These people are going to lose their shit. When they, yeah, so this is the raid of Luis Lucas.
Federal law enforcement say they're carrying out authorized criminals. They're carrying out search warrants at more than 10 locations across the state, including this cannabis shop, which we are told that the senator is associated with.
Oops. Sounds like money laundering to me. Yeah, Jason. They're going to lose their shit. And it's, look, I'm telling you, it's coming.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
They should just tell this woman it's none of your fucking business. You should be pissed off.
No, that works. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so we have soundbite and then the video, second soundbite. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. The link for this live feed, is that what you're talking about, Echo?
FBI is currently raiding the office.
It's echoing the feed? Okay, hold on.
Yeah. News conference. It's the president speaking.
It's the president speaking. So I don't even know when
I think the actual echo in the feed is coming from the feed itself. Okay. Yeah, it's Fox 5 out of Virginia, I believe.
No, just I need to be able to speak with them so they can tell us when we're going to actually hit, so we don't have to stand out here and like get people coming over. You know what I mean?
Do you want me to ask for an update? I can text someone.
Yeah, sure.
These reporters are worried about something happening to them. And this here goes to show
from hard hats to steel-toed boots, Granger's got your safety needs covered. Literally. Shop Granger's vast inventory of safety products. Call, click, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
That's the Fox 5 crew during the live shot.
We will be later on, so she's not completely incorrect.
No, because did you hear they were saying that
Oh, yeah, I'm sure somebody tipped off the news media, probably the feds or the government, because they want this out there. So all of those Blackhawks that I was showing you guys yesterday in Virginia, I think they were, there was Virginia, where else? There was 2 other places. And now you have these raids. So they probably dropped in like ERT yesterday, or late last night, raided the place. What's going on? There is... The FBI is currently raiding 10...
Hi, Matt.
10,
well, how are you?
10 places in Virginia associated with a...
We are, but yeah, if you guys have an update of when we'll be hitting, I know President speaking. But do we have any idea how long we expect him to be speaking? Probably not. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. All good.
I take it she means President Trump, not the president.
Yeah, no, we're fine. If there's if you do get any update, if you guys could just let us know, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so they're raiding the office of Louise Lucas and some of her associates, and some weed dispensaries that I was told was being used for money laundering.
We have a 3 o'clock. Oh no, that's not us. It always throws me that we get the emails for everybody's request.
Yeah. I don't know, Jason, but they weren't shy about showing the Blackhawks last night when we were covering it. I mean, there was like 6 or 7 in like one little group. So they weren't shy. And then the one group, they also had a state police helicopter along with them. So I think what we're seeing is these QRF forces kicking off. Yeah, people, yeah, there are a couple people in here. Dude, there's so many raids going on right now. My buddy just sent me a text of 2 more. And he said they're basically they're not there yet, so don't say shit. Oh, it looks like Pete Hegseth just signed an order. Yeah, Kelly. We're starting local level and working our way up. Pete Hegseth just signed an order that anybody who was forcibly removed from the military because they didn't want to take the jab. He just opened up a window of 1 year for you to put in paperwork to come back with pay and benefits restored. So there's up there in Minnesota, they were in front. All right, here we go. Let me see. So my buddy from Justice, or not Justice, well, it is Justice, but the Marshal's office. U.S. Attorney Janine Pereiro Judge Jeanine, just announced that the activist Judge Boasberg has blocked a grand jury from investigating the Federal Reserve. Pirro said this block is totally illegal. The House needs to start impeachment of these activist judges. Enough is enough. As a result, Jerome Powell today is now bathed in immunity, preventing my office from investigating the Federal Reserve. Uh-oh. Well, it looks like that one's done. Let me see if I can find another one. Let me go back to... another link. I don't know if those people got spooked or what. Let's see. That would suck if see if this one's live.
Going on within the community. We know how prominent of an influence Lisa Lucas is, not just in Virginia, but in this community right here in Hampton Roads.
All right. Let's see. Why aren't you loading?
For years, liberals in Congress, including Sherrod Brown, voted against securing the border.
Connection isn't just physical, it's mental too. And that's actually why I wanted to share this.
Watching. Again, that throng of people has kind of dialed down since we've been here. People have been coming and going, as these investigators have been. But truly, just the curiosity is killing the cat here. They just want to know what's going on. Why only FBI agents are out here. I know that earlier you would ask me, hey, what other agencies are out there right now, if any? No local agencies. All we see out here right now is FBI, so we only know that we've got those federal forces here working. None of those local enforcement working here. We have reached out to Portsmouth PD to see if they have any information about what's going on, but again, they have referred us to the FBI. So we're just waiting and watching while we learn more, while we're waiting to learn more of that information, Connor.
And last question for you, Madison. I know I'm nitpicking here a little bit, but just trying to get a sense of what we're working with. Is there any difference in the activity between the offices and the cannabis shop? Is there any differences in what you're seeing in terms of how they're approaching those two locations?
Yeah, Connor, since we've gotten here, it's actually been a little bit of a stark difference. Like I said, and I've kept saying, the scene here at Louise Lucas's office is quieter than what we did see at the cannabis shop that was next door. So right now, what you can see is just this one vehicle parked out front. Now, I presume that there are probably a couple other agent cars here in this parking lot. I'll step out of the way, because we've seen agents stop at a couple of these other cars here in the parking lot. But from what we can discern, not many of those are FBI-related vehicles that you see here in this parking lot. But across the street or across the little way that we've got right here, that's where we've got most of the action happening. So there are definitely more agents on scene at the cannabis outlet instead of...
Let me check.
Why that might be, but again, the FBI haven't been able to give us any discrete or concrete answers about that. But again, over there at the cannabis outlet is where they had that U-Haul where they were putting boxes
let me know if
into
it's
and
still
hauling things out
back
of.
feed.
So again, most of that action, at least 5 SUVs off the top of my head I can imagine that I've seen that are out there, as well as a tactical vehicle that's FBI as well. All of those with marked FBI agents.
Okay, Madison Schlegel, thanks very much. Your coverage this morning into this afternoon has been excellent and thorough. We look forward to more of it at 4 o'clock on 13 News Now. And Madison, if there is some major update, surely Madison will contact us. We'll bring her back onto the stream. But for the time being, we know that you've got a lot of work to do. So we appreciate you taking a little bit of time with us this afternoon.
Thanks.
All right, Madison Schlegel, everybody on the scene out there in Portsmouth, working this story, trying to get more information, looking for updates. You know, she's the one who helped us get that statement from the FBI, reaching out to various officials. And of course, Bobby Scott's office sent us his statement as well. We will revisit this story throughout the stream. Even if we don't get new updates, we'll continue to summarize and to come back to coverage of this story as we go. Major breaking news here in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and the country at large here with the raid at the offices of Louise Lucas in Portsmouth and the cannabis shop right next to those offices, which Madison mentioned Louise Lucas has connections with as well. So this is something that we're going to continue to cover. But for the time being, we're going to take a break here on Live Impact News. We're going to go to commercial. When we come back, we have a live event happening at the White House. We've got forecasts to get to. Plenty to cover here on Live Impact News. We'll be right back.
Yeah, I think it was picking up the back feed from my mic. Let's see. So that one. So let me get back into this other. So this Boasberg. This is going to get interesting. I'm telling you, I have a feeling there are going to be some marshals picking up some people. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. All right, so Italy has now refused U.S. aircraft to use the Sicily Air Base. What is that? Is that Sigonella, I think? Transport weapons for the Iranian war. Let's see. Did you guys see where Kash Patel was on Hannity's podcast? And Kash Patel had told Hannity that we have Hillary's server. Uh-oh. I want to see this before. I think this here is bogus, but Operation Red File. Leaked documents expose Obama as a foreign enemy. Trump signs military arrest order for Judge Advocate Generals to arrest. Donald Trump activates the Judge Advocate General Corps. Obama branded as a foreign enemy. Sealed orders ignite. Yeah, I think that's all bullshit. The whole wording of that sounds like bullshit. All right, so here. The Minnesota Democrats on the fraud committee have blocked a subpoena into Somali Rep. Ilhan Omar's involvement in a $25 million fraud scandal. She is refusing to turn over any documents regarding her fraud activities. Investigators want to see her communications with a convicted ringleader of the theft from $250 million in COVID funds. That particularly part of the probe. That money was meant to feed hungry children. So they blocked it. Their state legislators. So look for the feds to step in there real quick. All right. So you guys remember when Judge Alito, with the birthright citizenship, during his dissenting opinion, where he had wrote that we need to end birthright citizenship because people who actually have family roots, generations in this country have less likelihood to do damage to the country. Well, the two parents of the person that was trying to. Here, I'll just read the whole article. It was revealed that the Chinese suspects who tried to detonate an IED at the U.S. Air Force Base were birthright citizens of illegal aliens. Per the Daily Wire, the two's parents were arrested on March 18th for illegal entry. They tried to get asylum in 1993, but ultimately got a deportation order in 1998. It was the children of Chiquen Zhao and Zhao Zianzhen who tried bombing the MacDill Air Force Base Visitor Center in Tampa, Florida. Justice Alito literally warned that the children of foreigners would have allegiance to our enemies. Oops. That didn't take long to age. Okay, here's something that I'm sitting here watching. A couple videos of Secret Service. Looks like they're using fake hands again. So Trump is walking out into like a conference room. I think it was the speech that he gave yesterday. And the agent behind him, his hands are like stuck. Like solid stuck. So they're utilizing these fake arms and hands again, because they probably have like their hands on their weapons ready to go. All right, here we go. All 9 members of the Antifa cell in Texas have been found guilty of terrorism. The terrorist charges brought by the DOJ. So all 9 of those people, the terrorist ambushed the ICE agents at the detention center in Alvarado, Texas, back in July 2025. So all of them guilty. All right, so here's another one. Somali migrant Maine councilman Imam Osman resigns after being implicated in a fraud investigation. He's now blaming racism. All right. Here is all right. So the DOJ has just issued a grand jury subpoenas demanding the identities of all individuals involved in the 2020 election in Fulton County, Georgia. All right, so here are all the grand jury on April 17th. This is the one where I told you that I was told that the true bill was that came back from the Fulton County grand jury. So here are all the people who have been officially indicted, and looks like their homes are maybe getting raided right now. Individuals assigned to review mail-in ballots. Individuals assigned to voter review panel or board. Individuals assigned to mobile voting locations. Individuals assigned to transfer results to or from media or transport ballots, ballot stock or media. Individuals employed or contracted by the Fulton County Board of Registrations and Elections. Individuals who worked or volunteered for risk limiting audit. Individuals who worked or volunteered for the recount. Individuals who served as precinct managers and assistant managers, including every single co-conspirator who participated in the conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States. So that's happening right now. That was just released by the DOJ, so they're currently raiding these people's homes. Okay, so this just come out of the Supreme Court. Oh, let me get back to it. Where did it go? Where did it go? Supreme Court just come out with an opinion, and Sheila Jackson Lee didn't even dissent. There's so much shit coming in right now, it's ridiculous. It had something to do with the redistricting. Let's see. Alright, let me go back up here. They're just sending me so much fucking shit. Alright, per CENTCOM, the U.S. military has disabled another Iranian-flagged oil tanker, which tried to violate the blockade. The MT Hasna ignored warning en route to the Iranian port and was disabled by a 20mm cannon on a U.S. F-18 Super Hornet launched from the Abraham Lincoln. Oops. Yeah, so Trump just called out Minnesota's corruption. President Trump, Minnesota is an interesting place, a place that is under investigation by her vice president. Trump goes full ballroom mode. I'll have windows thicker than any ballroom I've ever built. 6-inch thick. This can repel a lot of weapons. He's such a goof. Let's see. Per Representative James Comer, out of his office, 13 D.C. police officers have just been served with termination papers for their role in manipulating crime data. Here's a big one. This one here, because I believe this lady is 100% on the up and up. Reporter Catherine Heritage testifies in front of a closed session of Congress that CBS News has locked her out of the building, seized all of her files, saying she was working with sources to expose government corruption. CBS News' decision to seize my reporting records crossed a red line that I believe should never be crossed in any media organization. Multiple sources said that they were concerned that by working with me to expose government corruption and misconduct, they would be identified and exposed. CBS News locked me out of the building and seized hundreds of pages of my reporting files, including confidential source information. Oops. All right. So happening now, New York Democrats now have the state police mass arresting climate leftists who blockade Catherine Hochul's office, elevators, and exits. The left are realizing law and order suddenly has to apply when chaos comes for them. Oh, this is going to be a long one. No zip drive, lady. I remember the zip drive, Doc. Matter of fact, I think I still have one. Let's see. All right. So this is coming out of DNI. This reporter has confirmed declassified intelligence documents under review by DNI Gabber reveal that the CIA operative Eric Carmella personally briefed Barack Hussein Obama, the mastermind of the grand conspiracy, to take down the United States government on the Russia conspiracy hoax at least a half a dozen occasions right inside of the Oval Office. Additionally, National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard has officially revoked the TSSCI security clearance of the CIA operative Eric Carmella. In other words, the CIA plotted in a conspiracy with Democrats to take down the government in 2016 in the executive branch of the United States in 2019. Oops. Let's see. There's just so much shit coming in. So it looks, I think that's an old story. It was about Mark Kelly. Let's see. And so, looks like Trump called out John Thune again. I still don't think they're going to pass that Save America Act. I think that's going to be the precipice for the emergency order. Okay, so remember when I was telling you guys that I believed that the whole 8647 that Comey put the seashells wasn't what it's being played out to be. I think it was him wanting to come in. Well, now there is a declassified document that Susan Rice's email shows that Obama and Comey agreed not to proceed by the book regarding the Trump transition team. I think Comey is turned over a bunch of shit because he's afraid he's going to be somebody's bitch. Let's see. Oh, okay, Breitbart. Smooth up in ya. Here you go. How stupid can you be? Pretty stupid when you're that. Pramila Jayapal, Democrat from Washington State. Breitbart just put out, announced she has been working with foreign countries to supply oil to Cuba in defiance of President Trump. She says Trump's economic sanctions against the communist regime are equivalent to illegal bombing the nation's infrastructure. She is openly admitting she's committing treason. You are working with Oh my God. This shit's too nuts. Wow. Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso just went berserk on the Senate floor after Democrats admitted they're traitors. This is a Democratic senator. The people we care about the most are the undocumented. Wow. Boy, there's a lot happening. Yeah, these are some of the articles that are coming in from Nick Sorter and from some Senate leadership accounts. So now, Ilhan Omar has refused to turn over any documents. I have a feeling she's going to be in cuffs here shortly. This is nuts. Let me see here. Yeah, so it does look like now. I just looked. I guess I can do super chats now. I know it's like 30% or whatever the hell it is. Super stickers, all that. So it looks like keeping the hunter off the stream may have paid off. Let's see. Let me get... I'm gonna get these EAMs up. I don't think there's going to be much right now, but we'll take a look at. Yeah, in case you guys didn't know, Ted Turner passed away. I think he was 87. Yeah. Boy, that took a special person, because I don't know how somebody could be married to Hanoi Jane. Let's see. Let's get these up and running. Noise reduction. Web. Triple 175. All right, so let me go back and widen that. That faint signal that you guys hear, that's what they call a 1T1. Yeah, let's go over... There's a lot of fucking planes up. You're right, Kathy. Holy shit. Let's go over to the big board. Yeah. I am using software-defined radio. The servers that I'm currently using are out of the Netherlands. If you guys, yeah, I can. This is. I can get. I'll put the web address in here. That's the one that I use. Let's see what we got. That looks like a B-52 right there just by the size of it, but let's find out. Oh no, that's Night Watch. So that Joker's over Indiana. So this Force 03 is probably getting ready to refuel Night Watch. Would be my guess, but we should probably see here shortly. Hopefully, Night Watch, because for some reason they seem to fly over my area quite a bit. If this Joker gets close to where I'm at, I'll go out and see if I can get a little pic of it. Video from the hood. So there's Constant Phoenix, that's ISR. Here's another one. I want to see where this Joker goes. So he's at 20,000. See where this one's at. He's at 34,000. So I doubt they're going to be refueled. Yeah. Yeah, they're sending a lot of data. It's a lot of data being pushed. Yeah, E6, Wright Patterson, yeah, close to you. Alright. Yep. Alright. I'll be back in 1 sec. All right. How long is 1 second? 1 hour? Nice. Well played. No, they pick up Pootie. Trust the plan, baby. No, Miss Panda is wanting something to eat, and I didn't. She was out there dragging her bowl. And Mom heard her, so Mom's in there fixing her something. Huh, Bubba? But I don't know. There's a lot of trainers. Let me see. I want to see what the... Lunch is served. Panda heard that bowl hit and she took off. Yeah, so he's getting ready to land. He's going to right Patterson more than likely. There's that Cobra. And catch the Cobra ball. Yeah. And here's the other one. Boy, it seems like they're worried about something. You know what this could be too? Is this Cobra 01. They could be doing a lot of data collection on cell phones and that. If they if like a military or even a federal judge has authorized the wiretap interceptions. Look at this flight path. He takes off from Sandog or San Francisco all the way up, goes up into Yellowstone. Damn, there's just a lot of P8s. Wait, that's another E6. Is that 3 of them up now? Okay. Yeah, she getting ready to land. Let's see what everybody's tracking. I just tried to super chat myself and it says I couldn't do it. That's funny. Alright, I'm going to do some digging on. I'm going to send out a couple text messages, see if I can get some more information on this, on these raids. Panda's my handler. That's funny. Oh, there's Big Chair. What the fuck's he want? Give me a call when you get a second. Okay, I'll have to give him a call. This ought to be fun. Oh, and don't, we'll be doing, colas tonight, too. So, that'll be fun. I like going on there. 10 seconds of darkness. Hey Doc, did you go Lee Harvey? Oh my God, was he going off on that dude? Yeah. You got that right. So you're leaving for 1 second. What, Miss Panda? What? Yes. Yes. She hears me in here talking and she's trying to figure out who I'm talking to. Now she sees that no one's in here. She'll oh my God. He was just going bonkers on that dude. It was funny him having arguments with Grok over his credibility. I want to turn this signal. Turn these two down. And let me get the BBC up. Have some background audio. Let's see. 198. Oh, you got jokes, sissy? 6 hours later, you're a comedian? Everybody's got jokes.
I'm serious, Laura. Debbie approves. And Kate. What is this? We're worried about her. And frankly, we're worried about the farm. Dad knows what he's doing. He truly does. What are you planning? Because he won't like us interfering. No. I really don't think we have much choice. Unless we're prepared to watch over
Lee and Grocker trying to make a baby.
Adam, I really don't have the energy for this right now. I just want to...
Alright, I'll be back in 15.
I just said, I'm tired.
Is that better, sissy? 15?
Something about what? About Brian, of course. No, you did. Something's gone on between you. Lillian said as much last week. Lillian? Yeah. She said Brian isn't as callous as I think he is, as though he was, I don't know, protecting someone. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. In fact, I know there's something you and Brian are hiding, and I'm not leaving till you tell me what it is.
Fine. I'll tell you. But you have to promise not to tell anyone, even Dad.
Mary, what is it?
But you like the courgettes or the tomato slips. Brain here.
Really? What about the kids?
Oh, no, not yet. Cleo's doing some jobs at Bridge Farm with Henry, and Zeynep's still at work. No, I meant Fletch.
How's he doing?
Good, yes. We've been having a nice chat. He agrees that the courgettes are doing well.
Oh, he does he? Hands off our courgettes, Fletch. Do budgies eat courgettes?
I'm sure he would, given half a chance.
How was the emergency call-out?
Oh, it was quite sad, actually. An elderly man in a flat just outside Felpersham. His boiler's on his last leg.
Oh, dear.
His face when I told him he needs a new one.
Oh, poor guy. He might qualify for a grant, though.
I really hope so. Life can be so hard for people, can't it?
Oh, it can.
How was your day?
Yeah, good, thanks. Ben and I did some planning for the young person drop-in sessions and the mental health stall at the market. Oh, we're thinking of calling it Green Shoot.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, thanks. I keep thinking, though, the farming-focused stuff is really important, obviously, but not everyone in rural areas is a farmer.
Of course not.
I want to make sure that we're offering something for people from every walk of rural life.
Every walk of rural life. I like it. Use it as a slogan.
Oh, yeah, good. I just don't know what for yet. I keep having all these great conversations, but I'm not actually making any progress. But I told you I had a chat with Natasha and Anna yesterday. Anna Trigorin, that's Carol's daughter.
Oh, yes, about the WI and the wet listing.
Which all sounds fantastic, but again, it's nothing concrete.
Yes.
And I'm worried that, some of the ideas I'm having are a bit niche. Like the fundraising for free transport for the people to get to support groups. I mean, it's great, but I want to be able to offer something that lots of people can use.
Yes, I see what you mean.
Something I have noticed since I've started working here.
What?
I find it a lot harder to get people to open up.
In the surgery, you mean?
Yeah. When we were in Solihull, I felt that people were much more willing and able to talk about their problems, whereas here, well, generally speaking, they're not. Well, not as much, anything. I mean, it's hardly a scientific study, but it got me thinking. It's all very well saying spending time in nature benefits mental health, but at the same time, social isolation is a big problem in rural areas. And even when support networks do exist, people can't always access them.
But it is true that spending time in nature is really good for the soul. I definitely felt the benefit of working at Bridge Farm. In fact...
What?
I wonder if there's some way you could tap into that.
I can't believe it. Well, it's true. And you're saying Brian took the blame for you?
Didn't want him to.
So George thinks it was Brian who attacked him?
Yes.
So why hasn't George gone to the police?
My dad gave him money towards his business to keep him quiet.
What? And that's it now?
Stop, please. You just stop a minute.
I'm sorry, but this is a lot to take in.
You have to promise you won't say anything.
I won't.
Not even to Dad. He'll kill me if he knows I told you.
Look, Rory, it's all right. It's all right. Let's talk about it.
No, I've told you. I don't want to talk about it. I need you to go.
We have to talk about it. I can't leave you like this.
Fine, I'll go then.
Rory!
Sounded like a bit of a battering on Sunday.
You're telling me. I'd have been better off not playing at all. My knee still isn't right.
Oh, what have you done?
Twisted it, I think. It's getting better. Slowly, though.
You need to rice it.
Rice?
Yeah. Rest, ice, compression, elevation.
Of course. Oh, you all right, Rory?
Rory? Hey, hang on, mate. Sorry, Dad. I can't talk right now.
I'll better get this.
Yeah, sure. Rory! What is it? What's the matter?
Sorry,
Has something happened?
No, well, yes, but...
What is it?
I can't...
Sure, don't get you down.
No, he's out anyway.
Okay, well, how about a walk?
No,
I won't make you talk. Just walk with me. Please? I can't leave you here like this.
Pear Farm?
Yes. You've heard of them?
Yeah, I just never considered it might be something Bridge Farm could do.
Well, no, you're so busy, all of you. But when you think about it, Bridge Farm has just the right ethos. We could offer something for local people who are struggling. Time and space to work on the land. A sort of safe haven to give them a sense of purpose. It could really benefit the local community.
Yeah, I can see that.
So what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, the idea's appealing, and I know care farms do good work. I suppose the question would be, what would it require of us? Because we're a bit stretched already.
Oh, I know that. But I'd be very happy to help with the organization, and we could start very small.
Listen, Akram, I need to get home. I have to do the kids' tea.
Oh, of course. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. Leave it with me. I'll discuss it with the family, and I'll get back to you.
Do you want to stop for a minute? Sit by the river?
Yeah, all right.
Looks full, the river.
I never know if it's full or not.
No, me neither. Always looks the same to me. Just feels like one of those things I should know about. River looks full, or river looks low. I know I said I wouldn't make you talk, and I won't. But if you want to, I mean, it might help.
It might.
Yeah.
I actually think it really would help.
Okay.
But I can't.
Why not?
Because it wouldn't be fair to tell you.
You're worrying me now.
I'm sorry. It's about something I did. Something I regret.
Right.
And I thought I'd sorted it, that I could live with it, but it's really hard. And it doesn't seem to be getting any easier.
Sounds tough.
Don't feel sorry for me.
I do, though. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I get it. Roz, it isn't to do with Julianne, is it?
Julianne? No.
Okay.
Why would you think that?
I don't know, it was quite a big thing, wasn't it? And it was a secret. I wondered if you might have been thinking about it, or whether she'd been in touch or something.
No. It's nothing to do with Julianne. I haven't thought about her in ages.
Okay. Good.
Actually, I keep thinking about...
What?
I keep thinking about my mum.
Oh.
Not that it's anything to do with my mum, this thing, but I just keep, I keep talking to her. And I've never done that before. Not since she died. I think about her, but I've never...
I think it's okay if you want to talk to her.
Is it?
Yeah.
Or am I losing my mind?
Probably not, anyway. What do you talk to her about?
It's just nice. We don't talk about the thing. We talk about stuff from when I was little. You know, books we liked. I do know that she's dead then.
Yeah, I know you do.
But I just, more than ever, just really wish she was here.
it's brilliant that Tom is so enthusiastic.
Well, it's a good idea, if I say so myself. He said he'd have to discuss it with the family, of course. But I think he was quite taken with it.
And as you say, it needn't take up too much of Bridge Farm's time. Just a small group of people to start with.
Yes, just to be in the open air, working with the soil.
You know, I can think of a few patients just off the top of my head who'd benefit from something like this.
A lot of people would.
Oh, you agree, don't you, Fletch?
He's very excited. Look, go on then. Stretch your wings.
Oh, you love letting him out.
He loves it. Look at him.
Oh, he does, doesn't he? Oh,
what's that?
Oh, that's a reminder to turn my bath off. Oh, remember in Solihull when I forgot that came through the ceiling?
Oh, how could I forget? Azra, the door. Oh no! Fletch! Come back!
I'm so sorry. He went straight for the window. There was nothing I could do.
Are there usually this many dragonflies down here? I couldn't tell you. I don't think there are. Are you looking it up? Yeah. Yeah. What do you know? An increase in dragonflies is primarily driven by warm spring weather and high rainfall. You should know that, being a farmer.
I'm not a dragonfly farmer.
You know, I wish I could help you, mate.
You have?
I haven't. Not really. I get that you don't want to tell me what it is, but I'm worried.
I don't want you to worry about me.
Well, you can't stop me. Okay, so you're in this situation, right? You've done something that you wish you hadn't. And you can't change the past. But you can change the future. So the way I see it, you need to work out a way to live with what happened. Is there anything that might help you to do that?
Like what?
Maybe, I don't know, is there someone you could apologize to? Or is there something that you could do to, like, make amends or something?
I'm not sure.
Sorry, it's hard without knowing the details.
No, that's helpful.
Okay, good. Wait, you're just saying that to shut me up?
A bit. No, I mean it.
You're right.
I have to do something. I have to try to make this right.
Drama on Radio 4.
Something's wrong.
It's the new AI model. It's gone rogue and it's trying to kill us. Imagine artificial intelligence becoming too intelligent and taking control.
It spreads by hacking into systems and installing copies of itself called sub-agents.
We've hit transport signal. There's been a train crash at Waterloo.
A thrilling radio drama based on the latest research in AI safety.
It's like the computer equivalent of...
Rafe starts on Friday afternoon at 2:15. To listen on your smart speaker, just say Play Radio 4.
This is BBC Radio 4. Now it's time for Front Row with Kate Mollison.
Tonight, a moving new memoir by Siri Hustvedt filled with the ghost of her late husband, Paul Auster. A concrete deer has arrived at the Venice Biennale. It's dangling from a crane as the centerpiece of the Ukrainian pavilion. We bring you the story of its evacuation from the front line of war. 2 theatre companies tell us about working with young people who've been through the care system and the unique sound of Gaelic psalm singing. It's a tradition living in the Outer Hebrides. We'll have it resonating here in the studio. Welcome to Wednesday's Front Row, live from Edinburgh. Well, there can be lots of strange experiences that flood in when a beloved person dies. You might sense their presence lingering in the home. You might feel like you've lost a physical part of yourself. For the Norwegian-American writer, Siri Hustvedt, there was all of that and the added complication that her husband was the famous novelist Paul Auster. For more than 4 decades, Siri and Paul were the glamorous couple of New York's literati. When Auster died of cancer 2 years ago, Hustvedt did what she instinctively does. She started writing, and she's just published a memoir called Ghost Stories. There are some very powerful moments. They hit home with extra poignancy in the audiobook, which is read by Siri herself.
I held his face. I said, God, we had fun.
didn't we? We had such fun. It came to me, the fun. It seemed so important. There was suffering, but lots of fun, too. I spoke to Siri Hustvedt earlier and I asked why fun was the word that came into her head as she said goodbye to Paul Auster for the last time.
You know, I have to tell you, I am not sure, because if someone had asked me, we knew that Paul was dying. If someone had asked me, what will be the last thing you say to your beloved husband, I never would have thought fun. But when he was dying, and I knew that it would happen soon, that was exactly what came to my mind. It seemed terribly important because the fun was a huge part of our staying together for over 4 decades.
And so much of that comes through in the book, Tina. You've shared it with all of us. Did Paul know that you were going to write about the process of him dying? Did you know that you were going to write about it?
I had no idea. And I think because Paul said it to me, he thought that I was going to return to a novel that I abandoned after he died, because I realized I couldn't go back. I am going back to that novel. I plan to finish it. He was a booster for that particular book, what I had already written. So I don't think either of us knew at all. But once he was dead and I was there in the house alone, I wanted to write, and I knew the only thing I could write about was, well, us and what it meant to grieve. Both my parents are dead, and I certainly grieve them. But I think when you lose someone from your everyday reality, when that's fundamentally changed by an absence, the grief is different.
Is this the state of mind you describe as cognitive splintering? Is an intriguing phrase. I wondered if you could elaborate on that, because many people listening who have lost people close to them probably can relate to that.
Well, you know, my memory was most definitely compromised after Paul died. I'm happy to say that I think most of it is restored. There may be some old age edges that remain, and perhaps they'll never come back. But I felt that my keeping track of things, it wasn't really my intellectual life. I could think perfectly well, if you will, about problems that had interested me for many, many years. But what I had to keep track of the most ordinary business. You know, have you paid that bill? What groceries do you need? Ordinary, everyday domestic chores became, splintered, fragmented.
Is this in any way related to another thing that you talk about? It's one of the various philosophers that you draw on in the course of the book, helping you to understand life without Paul. You reference Maurice Merleau-Ponty and his idea of intercorporeality.
Yes.
Almost feeling literally like you've had a limb amputated from you. This is very physical feeling of grief.
Yes, actually, Merleau-Ponty talks about grief as a neurological relative to phantom limb. So phantom limb is people who have lost an arm or a leg, but they continue to have the sensation that it's there. Now, I think most contemporary neuroscientists do not think that grief and phantom limb are related, but as a metaphor, certainly it's powerful. And I think there may be more to it, because when your subjective perceptual reality is fundamentally changed, which means the person who was there in the morning, breakfast, working in the same house with you, watching movies at night, having dinner, going to bed, waking up again. When that person leaves the perceptual landscape, if you will, something dramatic happens, and it's a bodily happening.
You're also having a kind of sensory reaction to it, as I understand. You're smelling the cigars that Paul used to smoke wafting through your house, even though he hasn't smoked them for many years. I want to ask about ghosts in many forms. Some of the ghost stories that appear in the book are Paul's letters, in particular to your baby grandson Miles, written for him to read when he's much older. Another example of letters, emails in this instance actually, that you let us in on are what you call letters from Cancerland. Emails that you were sending to a group of close friends to keep them informed about Paul's treatment as it went along. It made me reflect on many things because you give us a lot of detail of the actual treatment, but also the thing about emails that, 2 decades after they've become probably humanity's primary form of communication, we don't actually see them in books very much, unless they come up as a plot device. So as a writer, what do you actually think of the email form?
Well, I wrote those letters with some care. I didn't dash them off, and I think critiques of the email form may sometimes be that they're not so carefully written. But I felt a great responsibility, especially as time went on, to inform the friends. So I think there's a kind of prejudice. I do love real letters. There's something beautiful about the physical form, and letters are included as well. And in the UK edition of the book, if you open it up, you will see photographs of some of the letters and documents that I use in the book. But there's nothing wrong with the email form. I think it depends on who the writer is. But yes, there's a prejudice against the digital in a sense that I think is misplaced. Letters, language, written language is not going away. It's another symbolic form. It's just sent in a different way.
And then there's another layer of fragments that make up the book, alongside the love letters that you wrote to Paul when you first met, and the letters that Paul wrote to your grandson Miles, as we've talked about. Maybe the most difficult fragments are the messages to and the memories around Daniel. So this is Paul's first son, your stepson, and he died shortly after his own baby Ruby died. There was a lot of painful media speculation around that tragedy at the time. I was curious whether writing about it here, going back into your own relationship with Daniel as a stepmother, was that a cathartic process?
I don't know if cathartic is exactly the right word. I write it in the book, but I realized that it would be utterly fraudulent to skip over that relationship and to write about Paul. It's impossible. He loved his son, and the immense difficulties of his life, I had no desire to hide. At the same time, those terrible events in our life were certainly, what is the word, pivotal. It was heartbreaking and gruesome, and I didn't want to pretend it was anything else. At the same time, when I was looking through all the documentary evidence, and I found a comic that Daniel had given me when he was 12 years old, and I realized that his desire, if you will, to hide from the searching eyes of parents and authority figures was something that continued throughout his life. And that humanized what created the lurid speculations in media that you mentioned. So I wanted to take that story back. And before Paul died, he said, I want the story to be told. He didn't want the story about Daniel, his suffering, or Daniel's suffering, or the family's suffering to be hidden.
In the book, you say that when a writer dies, the books he leaves behind him qualify as remains. But then there's this added uncanniness, I suppose, in that there's a character called Paul Auster who haunts a lot of his work, in the New York trilogy, for example. And then here in Ghost Stories, you're revealing this other Paul, your Paul, this flesh and blood Paul. How should we understand the difference?
Well, as I write in the book, fame moves very quickly into the third person. Paul Auster, the writer. And mythological business collects around that third person persona. He was never that for me. And it's useful to remember that Paul was 34 when I met him. What we call fame did not arrive until he was 40. And by then, of course, I had my intimate being. and I wanted people to see something of that. Paul's humor. He was kind of a bon vivant in many ways. He loved his friends. He kept up with them. We had lots of humor between us, which was part of the fun. I think we sometimes thought privately about ourselves as a comedy slapstick duo.
You never did write that bit together.
Yes. So I wanted some of that to come across. And Paul had this reputation of being, extremely serious and intellectual, in quotes, postmodern. This was something thrown around a great deal. I have never understood what that meant in literature. But yes, I think I wanted to counter that with the intimate person that I knew for so long.
Siri Hustvedt and her memoir Ghost Stories is out now. On Front Row last night, we heard about the row engulfing the Venice Biennale following the decision of the international jury to resign unanimously in protest at the inclusion of Russia and Israel in what is regarded as the Olympics of contemporary art. Well, more drama hit the Biennale today when Russian anti-Putin activists Pussy Riot joined with a Ukrainian feminist group to storm the contested Russian pavilion. Wearing pink balaclavas, they yelled, "Russia's art is blood," under a cloud of pink, blue and yellow smoke. Meanwhile, just across the canals, a concrete deer is dangling from a crane as the focus of the Ukrainian pavilion. The sculpture was made for a park in the Donbass region and was evacuated in 2024 to escape damage from the Russian invasion. Last week, here on Front Row, the Ukrainian culture minister told us that Ukrainian artwork has been looted by Russians. Now I'm joined by the co-curator of the Ukrainian pavilion, Ksenia Malek. Ksenia, welcome to Front Row. Hi. Can you describe for us this origami deer? Tell us about the artist and what this sculpture might represent to Ukrainians.
Origami deer is a sculpture by the artist Zhanna Kadyrova. It's a famous Ukrainian artist, and you can see her shows all over the Europe and sometimes in USA. Initial idea of the sculpture was to make something beautiful for people in the park, because in this park it used to be a Soviet air fighter, and then when it crashed in 2005, local authorities decided that they don't want to dismantle this pedestal of aircraft, maybe because it was too expensive. And that's in that moment they decided to invite contemporary artists to make something there. So Zhanna came up with the idea to make something in tradition of European parks and to create just an animal, just a beautiful deer. And it became a very beloved place of all people of Pokrovsk. They used to make picnics there. It was a meeting point. Let's meet near the deer. And also there were tradition of children who graduated school to make photo with the deer. So it was like a very lovely piece of public art. And after 2024, we had to evacuate the sculpture, and now the city of Pokrovsk doesn't exist anymore. It's a battlefield, and it's totally destroyed.
And now the deer hanging from a crane in Venice. What's the significance of the crane and the hanging?
Because the deer lost its home. The deer lost its pedestal. The deer can't stand. And this is a very simple metaphor of millions of Ukrainians who also lost their home and also trying to find the place to live across all the Europe, UK, USA. So it's like displaced person, but a deer.
We discussed last night here on Front Row the jury resigning from this year's Biennale due to the presence of Russia and Israel. What's your response to that mass resignation, and what are your thoughts on Russia being represented this year?
First of all, I think it's not acceptable that Russians represent there, because it's just a normalizing of what they are doing, and all these talks about the place of dialogue, and all these, let's say, neutral position. We all understand that it can't be neutral. When Russian representatives talks about art beyond the politics, I can't imagine higher level of hypocrisy, because they're instrumentalizing art as a weapon of propaganda, and their representation at the most significant, most influential art platform, this is absolutely nothing but normalization of their politics.
What's the atmosphere in Venice today? Pussy Riot stormed the Russia Pavilion earlier today. Is there very palpable anger in the air?
I don't feel it like anger. I feel it like something normal finally happens, because yesterday Russian Pavilion was opened and people was there, and they were drinking free vodka there and doing something, and that was feeling really wrong. But today I saw at least 2 protests there, and after Pussy Riot there were another protest. I know that big Polish team, they made a protest, and after, so it feels more normal than it was yesterday when they had opening with flowers and free vodka drinks.
Ksenia Malik, thank you so much for being with us tonight, and all the best for your time in Venice. Now, how can theatre make us live the lives of others? Well, it can't, but it can get us to notice. And if you're somebody who isn't normally asked how you feel, making a piece of theatre can be a pretty powerful experience. That's the gist behind 2 initiatives working with people who have been through the care system. A new National Theatre of Scotland project, Caring Scotland, was launched today, centring the voices of people with care experience through a 3-year listening process. A production called 100 Voices tours Scotland from the summer, and earlier I spoke to its lead artist, the playwright Nicola McCartney. We were also joined by Maggie Norris, founder of The Big House, a London-based organisation which has spent over a decade working long-term with care-experienced young people through theatre, community and pastoral support. First, Nicola told us what the immersive experience of 100 Voices might be like.
We're building, it's almost like a little house in the foyer of the Scottish Parliament. You'll be asked to leave your bags and various other things behind. You'll be given a set of headphones, and then you'll be asked to enter into this house, and then you're going to walk through a series of spaces and be taken on a journey which is immersive in both sound and it's 4D. And you will be asked to interact with objects and pass through all these different rooms, all of which respond to the stories that we have listened to from over 100 care experienced people in Scotland. And you'll be asked to play various games, interact with different exhibits, but you'll also be listening to a number of different voices. So principally the voice of your guide, who's meant to keep you safe as you walk through the experience, but then other voices start interrupting him. The experience you go through as a spectator, you're still very much a spectator, you're you, but we're trying to make this experience of the installation, the journey that you have, as close to the experience that a child might have going through the care system. So some of the emotions, you will experience different emotions because of the rooms you enter, and some of the experiences you are asked to engage with, they will make you feel certain things that a child in the care system currently, or someone who's passed through it previously, might have experienced before. It's to try to generate feelings. That's why you're not put in the position of a young person in care. You are always the spectator. But what the installation is doing to you as you pass through this installation about and inspired by stories from care experienced people, it's doing similar things to you that the care system might make a care experienced person feel.
You mentioned stories that you've gathered from people who have been through the care system. What was your approach to gathering those stories?
So gathering is a word I really wouldn't use because it sounds very extractive. It was a listening project. What we did was we invited care experienced people to come and tell us their story, which does not mean that all of them are telling us their stories of care. It's my understanding through years of working in the sector that care experienced people often don't really feel in control of their own story. Stories are often extracted from them. They're often told about themselves in someone else's words. They're written up in someone else's words. They're labelled. And so really this is about care experienced people being able to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. They can talk about their experience of the system, or they can talk about their cat, or their favourite recipe, or they can write a poem or a song, or make something artistic that tells us about their experience. And what we wanted to do, because all what lies behind this is a huge archive, we wanted to build a huge archive of really diverse stories to try to break the stigma that a care experienced person is just one set of things. A care experience is part of a person's identity, it isn't all of it.
Let's hear from one of the people whose stories you heard, you listened to. This is Michael.
There's almost a kind of, and this is a terrible thing to say, but there was almost I was a deserving person, and that both my parents are dead, therefore nobody could look after me. Whereas other people where their parents are struggling, perhaps never experienced the same kind of care that I got, I think, in a lot of ways. There was almost I think the young people children took the blame for a lot of the faults and the challenges that their parents experienced that meant they couldn't look after them.
Very honest words from a chap called Michael there, who was reflecting on his own childhood in care. Now, Maggie, I wonder how you respond to what you heard there from Michael, and how that feeds into the kind of work that you've been doing with a big house.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a beautiful experience to listen to those stories. Obviously, I'm listening to stories like those, and have been for a number of years, but they still resonated deeply. And the thing about young people in the care system is that they're hidden. They're hidden from society, and they're treated like a dangerous parcel to be passed from one agency to another. So to actually give them the agency to tell the story that they want to tell, and it's lovely to hear that they had that choice, Nicola, and that they didn't have to talk about a traumatic history, but could talk about their cat, is lovely. And one of the young ladies that I listened to was talking about how she perceived her hypervigilance as a superpower, and it gave her passion and sensitivity. And of course, all the young people that we work with have developed hypervigilance, and seeing it so beautifully expressed was, very moving.
That's fascinating to think of hypervigilance as being something that is developed through experience of the care system, but actually being a real asset when it comes to theatre making.
Yes. Well, I mean, one of the things that we've really found over the last few years is that care experienced young people have a huge well of creativity because they weren't allowed to be children and to play. And so actually, if you put them in a safe environment where they're encouraged to play, it is, they go to great depths of creativity, and that's what we focus on when we create work at the Big House.
Jason, ain't much you can tell me. I'm low-key on the roads, I'm stealthy, scary like the nightmare on Elm Street. But I ain't from Elm Street, this is Hackney. It's not pretty like Chelsea, with a poor move mad to get wealthy. And outside it's spicy, if you ain't careful, it can get scary like Melby. Seen too much, don't get faced too tough, in a dream it can sell me. I don't shop no rocks on the block, but if you want a bag of reality, then fail me. Dish 'em out in scores in half.
So tell me about the origins of the Big House then, and why I think you've just suggested, but why you consider theatre to be a really appropriate and exciting form for these young people to be getting into.
I think it really builds their confidence and self-esteem. And of course, most of the youngsters that come to the Big House are very isolated. They're not able to, or haven't been able to express their emotions. And so giving them the space to do that is transformative. And, we see young people really develop through that process, and actually standing in front of an audience and playing the part and getting that applause and their responses is, hugely validating.
I think your next production is called A Doll House, a D-O-L house, obviously a play on the Ibsen, but also those letters, well, tell us what those letters stand for.
Deprivation of liberty. So it's a huge escalating and hidden problem. Most people in the street wouldn't know what you were talking about when you say a doll. So that's, a legal restriction that is put on our most vulnerable children that is ostensibly to keep them safe, but actually is creating, profound harm. So they are stripped of all their liberty. They're not allowed to see family or friends or have screens. They're often housed in places hundreds and hundreds of miles away. Very often, in fact, more often than not, they're being housed in an illegal care home with untrained workers. And it's a huge, growing national scandal. So we're focusing on it in the next place.
Nicola, what are your thoughts in terms of how people with skills in theatre, what they can offer in terms of working with people who have experience of the care system? What is unique to this kind of work?
Theatre is perhaps too often, I think, described as a great big empathy machine, which means that in theatre we tend to be trained in listening skills. We're also really curious. We're really interested in people and their stories because that's essentially what theatre is about. It's about how the world works, how people interact with each other. So with the artists who've worked on this project, their ability to listen and to hold and support that individual as they tell their story and connect with them as a human being has been really, really important. But I also think it's about an engagement of our imagination in how do we put that story across to people who know nothing about the care system. So it's sort of a job of translation as well, a little bit, I think, and working alongside care experienced people to help them realize their own stories in theatrical form, or to try to find unique ways of trying to put across the reality of that experience to the rest of the wider public.
And Maggie, it seems that one really key aspect of what you're doing with the Big House is that it's a long-term operation. This is not a short-term cultural project that works with young people and then disappears from their lives again.
Yeah, I think also one of the things that I should say is that we don't work with individual personal stories. And
why is that important?
I think it's because the young people that we work with are very young, so they can be from 16 to 25, and many of them are in crisis. And I don't think it's a good idea to actually be exploring personal stories when people are in crisis. So they're in quite a transformative journey at the Big House. So as I said earlier, we really focus on their creativity and, of course, their collective experience. But long-term is hugely important because just sort of, dropping into somebody's life for 5 minutes can be hugely damaging. Putting the spotlight on somebody and making them feel incredibly important and then, drifting off can be damaging. What is great about Nicola's project is that, she's working alongside a care experience charity who are providing that kind of support. So when I set up the Big House, and we titled it because that's slang for prison, and I talked to a lot of youngsters who'd been in care who were in prison, and they told me what they needed, and those are the founding principles, and long-term support was the biggie. Children need support over a long period of time. And so they're really at the Big House getting on a bus, and they get on and off the bus all the time and come back when they need support. So we might help them to get into university or to get a job, and then there's a problem, and then they're right back at the Big House. So that's why it's long-term.
Maggie Norris and Nicola McCartney. The 100 Voices interactive installation will be touring in the summer and the autumn. You'll find details of the entire Caring Scotland project, including a photography exhibition which has just opened, on the National Theatre of Scotland's website. The Big House production, A Dollhouse, is running in June and July at the Company's Theatre in Islington in London. incredible sound of Gaelic psalm singing before. It's a living tradition, still practiced mainly in the Outer Hebrides. I remember sitting outside a church on the Isle of Lewis with my ear pressed to the door. I was blown away by how the voices were rising and falling together like a flock of birds, everyone heading in the same musical direction, but everybody getting there in their own way. Well, now a new Gaelic language documentary follows a psalm enthusiast from the borders of Scotland to the Hebrides and across to Ireland. The protagonist is Rob McNichol, and he's with me in the studio now. And if we're lucky, he's going to be singing for us shortly as well. Rob, I know this is a family thing for you. Your father was the highly respected poet Angus McNichol from Skye. Tell us about how his death in 2022 fueled your interest in these psalms.
So when my dad died, we actually didn't have the memorial till the year later, the kind of public aspect of it. And in that time, I had been at Solmarostig doing the Cursa TV, the TV course.
Solmarostig's the Gaelic college in Skye.
Exactly, yeah. I would recommend that course to anybody. Part of that, I just did a project about Gaelic psalms where I just researched them a bit and then was lucky enough to be shown how to present up in Kilmuir near Uig on Skye, where my dad was from, and I was taught how to do it by Dinah Rankin, Katrina Budge and Dol MacLeod. So I had just fortunately learnt that skill, and then when the memorial came around, it just seemed like it'd be a lovely thing to do, to get his community from Carlops singing in the style of his community in Skye, where he grew up.
Because something that is so essential to these psalms is how it gets people to sing together. What makes them unique?
I suppose that, well, the thing that's unique, as far as I'm aware, is that because of there's a freedom in how they're sung that's sort of a bit like the Irish Sean-Nos tradition, in that you're just free to ornament as much as you want, and as you said, get from one note to the next however you want, and then it's lovely that we all meet on a note, go our own ways, and then meet on the next note, and then keep doing that in this sort of, it's a really lovely way to sing together that gives people freedom. And I also like to say that it's not outcome focused, if you want, in that it's not about how well you do it, it's just about doing it, and the aggregate sound that comes out of that in the community is just amazing.
You use the word present, so talk about the relationship between the leader, the person kind of setting the tune, and then the way that the congregation follows in that big swell of sound.
Yeah, so the presenter, or in Gaelic, you could say the person who's responsible for putting out the line, or Curamachan line, leads by firstly singing slowly and loudly so that people can find the note that they're singing, and then sings out the line, so the idea being people have heard the line, because initially it was to help people read the words of the Bible, essentially, who couldn't read, so this is a way of getting it on their lips. So you sing out the line, and then sing it again slowly and loudly, and the congregation sing with you.
We heard the voice of Callum Martin at the top of the discussion there. He's kind of one of the big stars of the Gaelic psalm world. And in the film, there's a brilliant scene where you go and meet this hero of the forum, and you go to the epicenter, which is Back Church in the Isle of Lewis, and you actually do the presenting, nay pressure, doing it in the heartland of the tradition. But there is a microphone set up for you here in the studio, Rob, and I know we're asking you to do something that's all about group singing, but to do it on your own, but you do teach this singing to people who've never done it before, so will you do a wee demonstration for us now?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would normally do with the group, or if I'm running a workshop, I would sing through the psalm first, and I would invite people to hum along if they want. What we'd then do is go over the pronunciation and the melody a few times, and then it would all come together at the end. And every time I do it, I think, how's this going to work? And every time at the end, it works amazingly. So what I can do is the first bit of that, where I can just demonstrate the presenting of a verse of Stornoway, the tune Stornoway, which
this is what we heard at the top. So the tune Stornoway. Thank you, Rob. Take your position at the singing microphone in the middle of the studio. Thank you. Then this is Rob McNichol singing live for us in front row. Stornoway.
Oh, kill me.
Rob McNichol live in the front row studio demonstrating Gaelic psalm singing. That was the tune Stornoway. And it's intriguing to think about what these, the heartiness of your singing there, Rob, is fantastic. And I hope that people were humming along as you suggested as we were listening. It's intriguing to think about what psalms do, the purpose of them, expressing different emotions, joy, anguish, grief. And you mentioned in the film, in the documentary, that you feel like people in your group in the Borders who are just starting out with these psalms might be getting something similar from singing them as what people in church in the Outer Hebrides might be getting from them. What that?
Yeah, well, I suppose in the group, not everybody's religious, so I suppose not everybody's necessarily singing phrase at the top of their minds, but although it's a mixture, there are certainly some religious people coming, that's absolutely, yeah.
Possible to get a similar level.
시간 엄수, 책임감, 대인관계 등 사회 경험을 쌓는 것을 매우 중요하게 여기는 경영인인데요. 소매점이나 수영장의 안전요원 등 다양한 분야에서 일하는 모습 아주 익숙한 풍경입니다.
네, 청소년의 경우 연방법을 통해서요 근로시간과 안전 엄격히 보호받고 있죠. 네, 그리고 여름에는 봉사활동도 빼놓을 수가 없습니다. 미국 고등학생들에게 봉사활동은 대학 입시에서 또 중요하게 평가되는 항목인데요. 여름방학을 이용해서 동물보호소, 지역 도서관, 지역사회 봉사나 해외 봉사 프로그램에 참여하는 학생들도 상당히 많습니다. 네, 또 인턴십이 있습니다. 견습 사원 제도를 이용하기에 좋은 시간이 바로 여름방학인데요. 대학생들의 경우 보수를 적게 받거나 아예 받지 안 받으면서 각종 기업이나 민간단체, 정부기관 등에서 일을 배우고 직업 전환의 분위기를 맛보게 됩니다. 네, 미국 대학 학생의 41%가 대학에 다니는 과정 중에 학사학위 과정 중에 인턴십을 경험한 것으로 나왔는데요. 물론 부족했던 과목을 보충하거나 다음 학기 학점을 미리
Here Today is a BBC production for the BBC World Service.
の在外交換からの連絡を受け取ることができるよ。
Że kłopoty na tym odcinku autostrady A4 sprawiły, że zablokowana była jezdnia w kierunku Wrocławia.
The war. In a social media post, President Trump called strikes on Iran would resume if a deal was not agreed. Here's our North America editor, Sarah Smith.
Donald Trump is offering very optimistic messages that the war in Iran may soon be over, saying he thinks that agreement is very close, and posting on social media that Operation Epic Fury, as it was called, will be at an end. If Iran agrees to give what has already been agreed to, he said, without specifying what he thinks this is. Mr. Trump's also threatened to resume the bombing campaign at a higher level and intensity if agreement is not reached. Iranian officials sound far less positive, describing their proposal as an American wish list, not a reality.
The US military says it shot at and disabled an Iranian-flagged oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman. In a post on social media, the US forces say the tanker was attempting to sail to an Iranian port in defiance of the US blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. The Israeli military says it's carried out a strike on the southern suburbs of the Lebanese capital Beirut, targeting a senior commander of Hezbollah. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused the insurgent leader of firing at Israeli communities and soldiers. The Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, says the government's working to get British nationals safely home after a deadly outbreak of hantavirus on a cruise ship. 3 people with suspected hantavirus have been taken to the Netherlands for treatment. The vessel is on its way to the Canary Islands. Spain says the plan for it to stop in Tenerife is safe. Leading figures in the news industry have been remembering the founder of CNN, Ted Turner, who's died at the age of 87. He was a pioneer in 24-hour TV news. CNN's chief executive, Sir Mark Thompson, described Ted Turner as the giant on whose shoulders we stand. BBC News.
Venturing deep into the natural world to answer questions about our humanness.
Anteaters probably aren't concerned about how well they perform in a job interview. They just don't want to get eaten.
Is there really power in a power pose? Can we understand our ways of thinking by looking into a riverbed?
What is your personal sedimented history?
And can plants help unravel the mystery of consciousness? I'm Becky Ripley, and I'm Emily Knight. Join us for the new series of Nature Bound across this week on Radio 4 and BBC Sound. Continuing tomorrow lunchtime at 1:45.
Female, freelance, and working from home. Naomi Alderman examines the sharp humour of an ancient Greek historian called Pampsila. We'll hear more on that in Human Intelligence tonight at 8:45. Now, though, it is time for this.
Hello, I'm Adam Fleming, and this is Social from BBC Radio 4. Each episode, we take one big subject that's been online and look at it from a load of different angles, like a state visit, where you're the guest of honour and the dishes are information about tricky topics. This episode, The Telegraph uncovers a load of online adverts for flats and flat shares that say they're for Muslims only, sparking many claims on socials that this is landlords behaving illegally.
Now let's be honest about it. The wording, Muslim only, is exclusionary.
One rule for one rule for everybody else. Because you can bet your bottom dollar that there are very, very few adverts on social media for white people only, dog owners only, Jewish people only.
This kind of stuff boils my blood. How is that okay?
Legally, there are situations where you can limit who's eligible to be your lodger. We'll find out when. The history of discrimination in housing will go back to the days of those infamous posters in windows. And the all-female terror block, the LGBT-friendly retirement village, who will look at places where there isn't room for everyone. And if you want to get involved in the discussion online, you can use the hashtag BBC Antisocial. And with me throughout this episode of Antisocial are two people who come at this discussion from different perspectives. Down the line is Anne Russell, a self-employed cleaner who's garnered a large following on TikTok, where she shares cleaning tips, life advice, and commentary on things like this Telegraph article. Hello, Anne.
Hello.
Now, your TikTok sounds very interesting. For people who have not seen it yet, describe what sort of content you do.
Well, I do cleaning because I am a cleaner and people want to know how to clean. I'm quite a political animal, so I comment, especially on political misinformation. There is a real culture of people not being entirely truthful, shall we say, and that annoys me.
And is there a link between the cleaning and the politics? Like, does doing the cleaning help you decide what you think about politics, or what's the interaction?
I think I have always been a very political animal. But of course, when you are working on your own and you listen to the radio and you listen to social media, you are in your own head, so you have a chance to think properly about subjects.
Also, I just wonder if you're scrubbing something really hard, does that mean you get more excited about the subject?
Oh, there are some topics that mean people might have a hole in their carpet when I finish vacuuming it with fury.
Well, great to have you on. Thanks for being on Antisocial. Also down the line is Alka Segal-Cuthbert, who's director of Don't Divide Us, which is a campaign group advocating for what it calls colour-blind anti-racism. Hello, Alka.
Hello.
Just explain a bit more about what Don't Divide Us actually is.
We're there to sort of make sure a common sense view on race and racism and anti-racism isn't overshadowed by a much more radical kind of definition of these things. And our recent work is looking at the Equality Act and some of the effects of it.
And I'm sure some of that will come up in our discussion in this episode. You just talked about radical interpretations of anti-racism. What do you mean by the word radical?
I suppose what I mean is there's a difference between a view that assumes that our society and the people in it are basically okay, but that there are people who will intentionally or unintentionally be bad actors, discriminate, act unfairly, etc., and that we have the law to address those cases. And then another, what I would call a more radical view, takes as its starting point that everything in this society is racist or liable to be racist unless we actively and continually try and work against that.
Okay, to be discussed in the next hour. Let's go back then to this report in the Telegraph. And what was your first reaction when you heard about this story? And why did you want to do one of your political cleaning videos about it?
Well, the first thing I noticed was that certainly on the bit that the Telegraph shared online was, they had seen all of these adverts demanding that they had Muslim-only tenants. And I thought, well, if that was true, that would be wrong, because it is indeed against the Equalities Act. But is it true? Because, on a lot of these things, I have noticed that a lot of the media start from a point where they know people will get riled up. And things like saying, I have noticed a lot of adverts saying, can I have a female-only flat share? Do not rile people up. So I thought the first thing I'll do is go and have a look to see what's going on. And I discovered that, in fact, you can advertise for Muslims only. You can advertise for women only, quite legally, for the reason that if you are in your own home, you have a right to say, the people you share your home
Yeah,
with.
we'll come on to the laws in a second. Alka, what was your initial reaction?
Well, I think it's not that dissimilar from ours, actually. I think it's very important to maintain two things in our society. One is a public sphere where we are all equal, and in that sense, I think using public communications to advertise for specific ethnic or religious groups is wrong because it's sending a message to a broader set of people. However, at the same time, especially if you're a lodger landlord, I think it's quite important the law doesn't extend into the privacy of our decision-making at a private level, because that breaches our freedoms.
Okay. Now, Anne and Alka, it sounds like you've got quite a good understanding of equality law as it stands at the moment and how it applies in the property sector, but not everyone listening to this programme will, so we called up Sarah Steinhardt, who is a barrister at Doughty Street Chambers in London, to get her to explain.
It is unlawful for a landlord or anyone else who manages property to discriminate against an occupier or someone who wants to occupy the premises along the lines of a protected characteristic. And for that purpose, it's exactly the same to say, for example, no Muslims, as it is to say Muslims only. Because as a matter of law, what you're doing is you're excluding a group of people along the lines of a protected characteristic.
That's providing a property for rent as a sort of landlord with tenants. What about if you're looking at a landlord who's taking in a lodger?
The first and most obvious one, before I come on to your point about lodgers, is that it is not unlawful discrimination to treat a disabled person more favourably. So, for example, if you are a landlord and you have a wheelchair-adapted property, it is entirely permissible to advertise that only to wheelchair users. So that's actually what we see far more often. It's a unique freestanding exception.
Okay, but back to the situation of lodgers then. So talk me through the exceptions.
Okay, so there is a narrow exception that applies in relation to small properties, and basically what it means is that if you've got a spare room in your house and you want to rent out that to someone who is not part of your household, then you are exempt from the anti-discrimination provisions of the Equality Act, except insofar as they apply to race. It is very narrow, so it wouldn't cover situations where, for example, you were living in a property and there were 4 bedrooms, you're occupying one of those bedrooms, and you want to let out the other 3 bedrooms to other individuals. That wouldn't be caught by this exception. So it's really about people that are sharing a home, either with the landlord or with a member of the landlord's family.
Right, so just to be clear, a woman living on her own in a 2-bedroom house could rent out her second bedroom and say, I only want another woman living in that room, but they wouldn't be able to say, I only want a woman of the same race as me living in that room.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, and that exemption on race is race only. It doesn't cover religion or belief.
No, it doesn't. So they could say, I only want a Christian woman or something of that nature.
What about a situation where it's flatmates looking for a new flatmate?
Those arrangements can get a bit legally complicated. Typically, what happens in those situations is that there is a joint tenancy between the various tenants. The landlord is letting to all of them jointly, and then they collectively arrange for somebody else to join them in that house share. In that situation, the landlord isn't living with them, so it simply doesn't apply.
Oh, right, and so therefore the current flatmates don't really have any say over the identity of their new flatmate, because it's up to the landlord who the new flatmate is.
Yeah, basically.
And that landlord is bound by the rules that we've been discussing about the Equality Act.
Yes, exactly.
And then we've got this new Renters' Rights Act, which comes into force actually while this programme is being broadcast. Does that change the situation?
Well, there is this ban on what we call the no DSS rule. So for a long time there's been an issue about landlords advertising properties on this sort of no DSS basis, so i.e. a blanket ban on anyone who is in receipt of the housing element of universal credit or housing benefits. And this is a rule which disproportionately adversely affects women and disabled people who are much more likely to need to rely on welfare benefits. The Renters' Rights Act should deal with that. That is the theory. But whether or not that has the effect of changing the mood amongst landlords is yet to be seen.
Thank you to Sarah Steinhardt. And it's not clear how many of the Telegraph's findings fell under the exception for live-in landlords. Anne, I'll start with you. Sounds like you know all about the Equality Act and the exceptions and the carve-outs. What do you think about this carve-out for live-in landlords who are letting out a room? Why should they get special treatment compared to any other kind of landlord?
Because you should be able to say the people you want to live with. You know, for example, obviously, a lot of women, single women, might feel that they didn't really want to rent their room to a man. And that, I don't think, is unreasonable. If you have dietary rules as part of your religion, and I know very little about dietary rules, but for example, I would assume if you kept strictly kosher, your kitchen would need to be treated in a certain way so that you could continue to be completely kosher. And obviously somebody who didn't keep kosher might not understand those rules. I mean, I really have no problem with that whatsoever.
Okay, Alka?
Yes, I mean, I agree with that. It's a very kind of common sense accepted idea that, if you like, the old adage of an English person's home is their castle, and I think we operate under different kind of standards in our private sphere than we do to our public sphere, and that's only right and proper. So, you know, the kind of things you can say and act and do in public are necessarily going to be different to what you do in your own home, and that would include who you decide to rent a room to.
And the fact that it's renting one room, do you think that's proportionate for when this exception should apply? Because if you're renting two rooms, then you're much more of almost like a commercial landlord, and this doesn't apply.
Well, I'm not sure that it is. I think this shows the kind of logical mess you get into when you try and extend the law into areas where perhaps a lighter touch would be much better. There is a real overreach happening here, where something like, for example, you know, public bodies are trying to do much more than their core mission. And you can see that in this whole attempt to try and make a society equal by telling everybody, including landlords, who they can and can't rent to.
But Anne, why is it, though, that we draw the line at you can discriminate when it comes to a lodger, but not when it's more flatmates? Because surely if as a society we want to clamp down on discrimination and be anti-racist, surely you should be anti-racist everywhere.
I think the first thing to remember is the spirit of the law and where it began. Because there were posters, there were groups who were excluded from everything by nature of maybe their religion, or the colour of their skin, or their accent. People would not rent to them, and there were those infamous notices and the things of boarding houses. Now, as well as that, we know, and it's not really up for debate because there are, a gazillion scholarly articles, that people do have completely unconscious bias. They might not think they do, but they do. And there are times when I think it's not overreach for the law to say, look, we do have unconscious bias, so we are going to try to take that into account. And sometimes that means giving certain people a little bit of a boost.
Okay,
maybe.
But Alka, what about this idea that Anne was just raising there of unconscious bias, and that actually you need the law and maybe the government and local authorities and other institutions to correct that?
Well, actually, I've got a really good example of that. I'm Indian, and my parents came over to Britain in the early 60s at a time when there were these notices, as Anne said. And when they were buying their first house in suburbs of London, there were the only non-white people in the street or in the area. The fellas were Welsh, and they told my parents the neighbours had begged them not to sell to my mum and dad because they didn't want any P-word in that area. However, they being Welsh decided to stick a finger up at the English and sold the house to my parents.
There's identity judgments flying in all sorts of directions in this story.
But the thing is that without the law, just allowing people the freedom to kind of, socially interact as neighbours, Within a year, that neighbour that had said that was asking my mum to hand her nappies over because of baby, and they didn't have a washing machine, and she was washing my little sister's
But are you saying
nappies.
that story proves why we don't need laws to prevent racism?
I'm not saying it doesn't prove anything, but it should give us pause to question whether the law, and when we look at the negative unintended effects of using the law in areas where it shouldn't be used, we need to think more carefully about what we're doing, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Do you know what? I think we can then look at some other examples now, because I can feel we're now edging into territory that goes beyond the private rented sector. Because when this debate was kicking off online last week after the Telegraph's article, lots of people were referencing a particular case where the courts ruled that a housing association for Orthodox Jews was allowed to allocate housing to Orthodox Jews only. So how did that work, and how useful is that example for this discussion? Let's go back to Sarah Steinhardt, the barrister from Doughty Street Chambers. So this was a case about a single mum living in Hackney in East London, and she wanted social housing, and she was on the waiting list for a very long time. And then what happened?
So she was a single mother. She had 4 children, 2 of whom were autistic, and she was assessed as having the highest priority for an allocation of social housing and a 4-bedroom need. The defendants were the London Borough of Hackney and the Agudas Israel Housing Association. And essentially what happened was that in the course of the time since her first having that degree of priority and the case coming to court, there were 6 properties which would have been suitable for her and her family, but which were instead nominated to the Agudas Israel Housing Association, which in practice only lets to members of the Orthodox Jewish community.
And the Housing Association's justification for doing that was?
So they relied on 2 justifications. It's important to say that they accepted that but for those exceptions, this was direct discrimination on grounds of religion. So the normal rule would be that can't be justified. But they relied on 2 exceptions. So one is the exception that applies to charities, and that means that charities are permitted to provide services to only members of a particular community that share a particular protected characteristic.
Because religion is a protected characteristic under the Equality Act.
So religion belief is a protected characteristic, and the second is positive action, and that's what permits anybody, not just public bodies, to take action to address disadvantages that are faced by people that share a particular protected characteristic, or meet the needs of a particular protected characteristic.
So what were the issues in the Orthodox Jewish community in that part of London that meant that justification was ruled to be correct?
So it wasn't in dispute that members of the Orthodox Jewish community faced particular disadvantages that were connected to that religion, and these included poverty, overcrowding, higher levels of religiously motivated violence and antisocial behaviour. And it also wasn't disputed that there were particular needs that members of the Orthodox Jewish community had as a group that were connected to that protected characteristic. So that included a need for a larger property, because families were on average a good deal larger than they were in Hackney more broadly, a need to be in the Stamford Hill area, and that's for reasons of safety and community, but also to be around synagogues, kosher food shops, other services. And there were also particular needs in relation to the premises that were being offered by the Agudas Israel Housing Association. So, for example, there were kosher kitchens and other features of the buildings themselves that met the needs that Orthodox Jewish people had in particular.
And how come the local authority were involved in this as well?
Because the way that it works with the allocation of social housing is that you make an application to the council, and then the council nominates individuals who are assessed as having a particular priority to a tenancy with a housing association. So Hackney were electing to only nominate Orthodox Jewish individuals to tenancies with the Agudas Israel Housing Association.
So if all sides agreed there were genuine problems with housing amongst the Orthodox Jewish community in this part of London, what was the legal challenge then?
I suppose the most important thing to come out of it was an understanding of exactly how proportionality is to be assessed. So not only do positive action measures have to meet needs or address disadvantages, but they also have to be a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. And so the issue with the Supreme Court was exactly how should that question be approached, and in particular, are you comparing the individual disadvantage that in this case the claimant had experienced in being bypassed for 6 properties, or the needs of the community more broadly? And the Supreme Court held the needs of the Orthodox Jewish community were such that this was a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim to achieve that.
Oh, so the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one in this case.
Yes.
Thanks again to Sarah Steinhardt. Okay, Alka, what do you think about that particular example?
Well, I have to say I don't agree with that judgment. I think the main problem here is that there is not enough housing. And what is happening with this overlaying the requirements and provisions of the equality legislation on top of all these public services and goods providers is that it's just sort of managing different groups and trying to sort of dish out the hardship, if you like. I'm not denying that the Jewish community may have particular needs, and I'm torn on, I think, as a charity, if it has that legal right to say housing only for Jewish people, that's one thing, I can accept that. But I think where the difficulty arises is in the connection with the local authority, because the local authority is a national public thing, and it has to and should, and it is correct in my view, both morally and politically, that the provisions should be there for everybody on an equal basis, because it's part of the public sphere.
So what should have happened in this case then, in your view?
I think they could have made, just off the top of my head, I would say maybe there could be, a sort of proportionality as to places that they would take for non-Jewish people, or the even better solution would be build more houses.
So your ideal version of the law would be along the lines of, okay, you can take into account one particular community's needs, but if there's someone else in the community who's really suffering because of a housing shortage, actually you can disregard the needs of the minority community.
I think that needs to be considered, yes, I really do, because otherwise you're just exacerbating this kind of competitiveness. They're getting something out of their relationship with the local council if they're entering that kind of negotiation. The local council has to really stand firmly for its duty to everybody in its constituency.
Okay, right. Anne, what were your thoughts when you heard that example of the Orthodox Jewish Housing Association?
Generally speaking, I'm actually quite in favour of these positive interventions. And that one of the reasons that I think it works is that it's very easy to look at the immediate effect. Now, the immediate effect of housing the Jewish people is you allow more of the Orthodox Jewish community to have more stable housing, which means that possibly their employment ability goes up, which helps lift that family slightly out of poverty. That family coming slightly out of poverty because they are properly housed, those things have ripple effects.
Can I just, I'd just like to put a counter-argument to that, because, it could well be argued that, by encouraging groups to stay, particularly the Jewish group with what's happening at the moment, to remain kind of, in effect, staying in their own lane, is increasing their segregation when at a time when we really need integration. We need non-Jewish people to be standing up for Jewish people and Jewish people to be standing alongside their supporters who are not Jewish. So the idea that different groups, because of their ethnicity or their religion, always have separate needs by virtue of that, doesn't take into account the fact life cycle changes, your needs change, what you want changes, as well as broader political and social developments. So it could actually be quite counterproductive.
Okay, Anne, what do you think about that idea then, that actually this measure, which is designed to help a minority group, just keeps them separated and segregated as a minority?
Yeah, sure. It's not clear-cut, but with an Orthodox Jewish community, they do have quite strong religious rules and convictions, and that can make it quite difficult for them. But being able to act as a group gives them more security and makes them feel more confident in the wider community.
Okay, Alka, I mean, are you opposed to the idea of a little bit of a boost for any group? Are there times when positive action, as it's called in the law, is justified?
Well, I think there's a difference between a little bit of a boost based on judgments that are taken locally in particular contexts, at particular times, with particular people, and a law like the Equality Act that is, by virtue of it being a national law, and by virtue of the kind of legislation that it is, who and what it affects in our society, is just all pervasive and overgeneralizing. So what you're getting is actually altering very fundamental constitutional arrangements that have got Britain to where it is, which is actually not such a bad position, you know, in terms of race relations. Recently there are more problems, it's true, but up until recently we've done pretty well, and surveys comparing how ethnic minorities feel about Britain show this, that generally we feel quite at home and like Britain and don't think it's a racist hellhole.
And I'm sure some people would quibble with that interpretation based on their own experiences. Now, we've mentioned this a few times about some of the examples through history that people quote in this discussion. We've heard it from Anne and Alka a few times already. But to get a bit more of a timeline, I've been speaking to Chris Hilliard, who is a professor of history at the University of Sydney. So let's start by looking at the Second World War. What was the experience of the large number of servicemen who came from other countries to be posted in the UK?
Some of those service personnel are really welcomed. When the government tries to billet Caribbean service personnel or war workers with white landladies, they run into trouble. Other workers or service personnel from overseas, they're from Poland, the government is usually able to find British families who are willing to take them in. They really struggle with people of colour, and the government tends to give up on that.
And so even though this is wartime and kind of we're meant to be pulling together to survive as a nation, there's still discrimination.
Yeah, there is.
And then we get the arrival of the Windrush in 1948, and then a lot that sort of starts the influx of immigrants from the Caribbean. What's happening in the housing market then in kind of the 1950s?
There's a lot of rebuilding of Britain's crumbling housing stock. A lot of people end up moving outwards, out of central London, out of the inner zones of cities, into new suburban council housing estates. So there's a sort of emptying out a lot of central city areas with poor housing. Those areas traditionally become magnets for migrants, and often for successive waves of migrants.
Is that the period where we're seeing those posters with the really discriminatory language saying no blacks, no Irish?
Yeah, and those are the areas most open for migrants, so workers coming from Ireland, coming from the Caribbean, and later from the subcontinent.
And were those posters themselves legal or illegal?
They are legal at the time, and they're often classified ads in local newspapers. There's some evidence that newspaper editors were very uncomfortable with these, but their advertising managers didn't want to touch it. You know, it's always been an exaggeration to say, you know, an English person's home is their castle, but for a long time government was very differential to property and the rights of homeowners, and it didn't intrude in our landlords' rights to set racist conditions on who they would allow in as a tenant.
I'm just wondering how widespread those types of posters and those types of adverts are, because I'm always conscious of maybe I just keep seeing the same archive photo over and over again. It makes it feel like every window in every street in London had a sign like that in it.
Look, as a historian, I'm always sceptical of these things, because these signs are part of popular memory, but they do seem to have been genuinely widespread.
Just explain to me then as well the infamous case of the constituency of Smethwick in the 1964 general election, because that became infamous because of a really racist slogan about race and property.
The local MP in Smethwick is defeated by Peter Griffiths, this insurgent conservative who runs on an explicitly racist anti-immigration campaign.
Because the phrase that Peter Griffiths campaigned and won on was, and I'll paraphrase, if you want a person of colour for a neighbour, vote Labour. Except he used a really hideous racist word for that. When does the state decide actually it needs to get involved here because there's discrimination taking place?
The sort of calls really start after the Notting Hill riots in 1958, and this eventually gathers momentum, and when Labour under Harold Wilson agrees to make it a manifesto commitment, and so when they come back into government in 1964, they start to act on this.
And they act how?
So they introduced a very limited anti-discrimination measure. It bans racial discrimination in pubs and hotels and public places. And then a couple of years later, they extend this to cover housing, banning racial discrimination in rentals and sale of housing is really important, employment and access to credit. But, if it's a flat in the attic or a garden flat and you, the landlord, are living on site, you are still allowed to discriminate.
So that's the end of the 60s. Where do things go in the 70s?
The 70s are the sort of peak of council housing. Council housing departments tie themselves up in all kinds of knots, trying to reconcile their obligations not to discriminate with their desire to sort of manage discontent about white tenants who are bothered about their neighbourhood becoming more ethnically diverse. Birmingham Council Housing Department is essentially a segregated housing system. Public sector housing is almost entirely white people. So they know that they've got to start giving tenancies to black and Asian people, but they feel that they have to manage this carefully. They have a quota for every building. So if you have a black family in one flat, the next 5 flats on either side must go to white families. So they try to space out where they place black families. But that ends up being discriminatory because it means that black people have access to a much smaller range of flats than the white people. Where they fall foul of the Racial Discrimination Act is that it necessarily means that to make this work, a lot of black tenants have to settle for less than ideal housing.
Thank you to Chris Hilliard from the University of Sydney there. So Alka, that history is why the UK ended up with the Equality Act, which was passed by the last Labour government in 2010. You don't like the Equality Act. What would you replace it with?
Well, the history that's just been outlined shows very much that there was a need for an Anti-Discrimination Act for sure. However, the Equality Act is not really there to deal with anti-discrimination. It's there to create equality. That's right. It was presented, Harriet Harman in 2010 presented it as a kind of technical bundling up of previous anti-discrimination law into one supposedly easier to manage piece of legislation. But it wasn't really that. Its starting point was that, well, look, so far in Britain, we've had all this anti-discrimination legislation, and in a way, it succeeded. Those kinds of explicit discrimination was far less present in British society by the time of the Equality Act. But nonetheless, what the focus shifted to was the idea that there were systemic disadvantages that were inbuilt. And these are cultural, and things like unconscious bias and all the microaggressions started to come into play. And the Equality Act was meant to change the culture, which is a different thing to dealing with an act of discrimination.
So let's say you repeal the Equality Act. Do you need anything else in its place?
Well, I would think it's certainly right that we need to act and make a public signal that we discrimination against anybody for a characteristic, whether that characteristic is race, sex, or religion, or whatever, which has nothing to do with the actual job itself. I'm talking about employment here. Is outlawed, right? But it has to be a concrete. The discrimination can't be as widely defined as it is at present. At the present, it could mean anything from an unfunny joke, a raised eyebrow, to really serious acts of discrimination. That's far too wide a category. So I think we really need to kind of rethink and design legislation which is much more precisely defined.
Okay, Anne, would you like to step in and defend the Equality Act?
Well, I think the idea that somehow there is an acceptable point of discrimination. There should be no discrimination or inequality in a society at all. Everybody in a society should be completely free from any kind of discrimination for any particular reason. Everybody should be treated individually on their personal characteristics, and everybody should be equal. Now, I know it's the real world, and that's probably never going to happen. But when you say things like, it might mean an unfunny joke, actually, to some people, unfunny jokes are a lot more than unfunny jokes. And when you allow things like that, you are allowing somebody, in fact, on the stage to say, these people are okay to make fun of.
Okay, well, do you know what? I think now we're straying into too many areas and too many other future episodes of Antisocial. I don't want to scoop myself in future episodes. So I think let's bring it back to property. And actually, I think maybe this discussion would benefit from a few more examples, and then we can look at them with producer Ellie House.
Hello.
Perfect timing for you to be on this.
I know, it's like my calling.
Right, give us an example.
Yeah, so just last month, a new housing development opened in Ealing in West London, and it's reportedly the UK's first only for women.
Okay, tell us a bit more about that.
It was a partnership between L&Q and Women's Pioneer Housing, which is a housing association dedicated to women-only homes. It's called Brook House, and they say it's 102 affordable flats. The tenants will be a mixture of women from the council waiting list and residents put forward by Women's Pioneer Housing Association.
And if we think back to the case in Hackney we were hearing about, is there a justifiable need there?
Yeah. There is a growing demand for homes for single women in Ealing. It's reported that there are over 600 on the borough's housing waiting list at the moment.
And what about men? Are they allowed to live there?
Yes, but only if they're partners of one of the tenants or male children. And when those children grow up, they are allowed to inherit their mother's property.
And has there been much of a response?
It's certainly been...
Depending, there are women who come from extreme domestic violence things, and as has been said, there will be men there will be male children, there will be partners, but Alka very often, I kind of get where she's coming from, and to a large degree, I don't disagree with her.
Well, do you know what? Why don't we see what Alka thinks about the example we just heard? So, Alka, what about the female-only tower block in West London?
Well, I think in a context where we know that there are far more of the homeless are men rather than women, I would really question the whole kind of rationale for this housing block, Brook House, I think it is in Ealing. Is there really a need in Britain for specialist social housing for women on the basis that they earn less than men and need safeguarding?
Well, no, the basis in this case is that the women are overrepresented on the housing waiting list in that particular part of London, and also the law would allow a charity to be set up that could build a male-only tower block if they could prove there was a justifiable need.
Then, then in that case we need to have a real public debate if that's how we want to proceed with our social and public arrangements along the lines of segregation, because that's what it is in effect. It's endorsing that. And I think the other worrying thing about this is that I don't think it really accurately describes women in general in Britain, and it's kind of cultivating this wider cultural thing of vulnerability as a sort of cachet as well as a route to material benefits. If there are more, just look at who's on your housing list and try and house them as best you can, irrespective of what's between their legs or the colour of their skin. I do not see what is so wrong with that.
Ellie, we don't have time to run through the whole next example, but just very quickly tell us about the LGBTQ plus one in Manchester.
In Manchester, there's a property under construction that is for majority LGBTQ people, particularly people over the age of 55, but they do say it will also include allies.
Okay, and what do you think about an LGBTQ plus only retirement community?
Oh, God, again, I can see why, this is LGBT plus people are coming out of the woodwork and are horribly discriminated against, and being able to live somewhere as you get older and feel safe really, really matters. And I would like to think that we didn't need this stuff. It would be wonderful to think that we had this wonderful accepting society that took people as we found them. But the truth of the matter is, we really, really don't.
Okay, and Alka, what about that final example we just heard there?
Well, that's really well put, because that shows the danger of this. Rather than confronting wherever we find bias and prejudice and discrimination, confronting that, what we're giving up on that and saying we will protect you by letting you live in your own little silos. I think that's a very backward step.
Okay, but what if the people living in that silos could actually feel safer there?
Well, what are they going to do? Stay in their houses all the time? I mean, it's absurd. It should be...
Well, no, but
they're citizens. They're going to have to get jobs. They're going to have to get the public transport. They're going to have to go on holiday.
Yeah, but weren't you arguing at the start of the programme that when it's your private home, that's a different matter from the rest of society, and that's why you're allowed to choose who your flatmates are?
When you have a position of power to decide who comes into your house, yes. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a public organisation providing a public service, deciding to provide those goods on the basis of not being a member of the public, but of being part of a special vulnerable group. That's actually quite the opposite of equality, really.
And I'm just thinking back to where we started with your cleaning TikToks. Does any of this ever come into your day job, as it were?
I mean, yes, to a degree, it absolutely does. And the one thing that I am very, very keenly aware of, I've been doing this for a very long time, is that one of the most important things for anybody is within their own home to be able to feel safe, no matter what the outside world has, that when you come home, you shut your front door, you feel safe and secure, and when you put your head on your pillow, you can sleep knowing that you will be safe and undisturbed until the morning.
Okay.
And the ability to do that makes people much more confident of opening their front door.
Okay, and I'm afraid I need to close the door to the antisocial studio because we've made it to the end of this episode. Thank you very much to Alka and Anne, who are here throughout. We'll be back next week, and in the meantime, you can listen to our back catalogue of previous episodes on BBC Sounds. Bye-bye.
Antisocial was presented by Adam Fleming, and the producer was Simon Tulip.
BBC Radio 4 explores a groundbreaking interview series.
It sort of doesn't really matter who Anthony Clare is talking to. I just want to be in his company.
Through the perspective of another interviewer, Kirsty Young.
I think that's the sign of a truly standout broadcaster.
Kirsty Young remembers In the Psychiatrist's Chair.
For me, Anthony Clare's programs remain the high watermark of one-to-one encounters.
You think you are at times rude. On Radio 4 and BBC Sounds, this Saturday night at 8. To listen on your smart speaker, just say, play Radio 4.
Now, Naomi Alderman's series Human Intelligence looks at the great thinkers from the past. Tonight's subject is the ancient Greek thinker Pamphila, who shaped our understanding of history and how it should be written.
Sometime between 54 and 68 CE, in the small Greek city of Epidaurus, a mature and happily married woman called Pamphila sat down with a roll of papyrus and her quill and started to write a book. It would extend to 33 volumes. Its title was Historical Commentaries, and her main reason for writing it, her main principle in organising it, was fun. She is the originator of cultural history, the kind of history we're doing right now. Not just the names and dates and important battles, the history of how people are, how we live, the gossipy stories we tell about each other, the texture and colour of our daily lives. Almost everything she wrote has been lost, like so much from the ancient world, but we know that what she wrote was extensively raided by later historians because she had recorded what others forgot to include, the human element. Human Intelligence, presented by me, Naomi Alderman.
Pamphila's central work was a very long book called the Historical Commentaries, considerably longer than either the Iliad or the Odyssey.
Edith Hall, Professor of Classics at Durham University.
She fuses the pre-existing traditions of biography and the pre-existing traditions of straightforward historical narrative and comes up with a whole new subgenre which she calls the embroidered history. But it seems to have been people-oriented, and I think if there's one unifying theme that we can find runs throughout it, is that she was very interested in people's characters.
She also comes from an intellectual context where the concept of history writing was well established. And it was pretty well established how you were supposed to write history. Herodotus, or Thucydides, took a great war, the Persian War, Peloponnesian War, and they told their history. Fascinating stuff, yes, but perhaps sometimes a little dry. By contrast, Pamphila seems to have had very little interest in men of power for their own sake. She wrote a history of intellectuals, poets, scientists and philosophers. She was interested in what people were like.
So Pamphila seems to have had an eye for a slightly humorous anecdote, one that wasn't disrespectful towards these great figures of philosophy and history, but slightly irreverent.
Here's an example of the kind of personal history she loved. Alcibiades was an Athenian military commander known for his warmongering, the ancient historian Thucydides describes his desire for conquest and his love of personal power and money. What Pamphila records about him is a brilliant story about his personality and his influence. She tells us that as a young man, a relative had sent him a music teacher because he seemed to have a talent for music. He was supposed to learn to play the aulos, which is a kind of double-piped flute. But when he put the instrument to his lips, he was so disgusted by the shape it gave his face that he broke the pipes and threw them away. Pamphila also says that when this story spread around Athens, all the people in Athens stopped playing the double pipes. That's funny. It's a record of the kinds of things people were saying about this young man. The way his stupid, destructive personality ended up influencing ancient Athens.
When we're dealing with classical antiquity, in general, we have to face the fact that we've lost about 90% of what was actually written. With writers like Pamphila, we have to make do with what other writers who we have got quoted from. So we call them fragments. It actually just means quotations gathered together from a variety of different writers. We do actually have about 10 chunks of Pamphila, so we can begin to put together a picture of how her mind worked.
Photius, a writer who lived in Constantinople in around 800 CE, did read quite a lot of her work. He describes its texture as characterized by, in the original Greek, to anamimigmenon kai ten poikilian, which means being mixed together and diverse. Others have translated it as spangled or dappled. This is a wonderful description, almost a whole personality in two rich words. Something warmly sociable, something many-coloured and shimmering.
I mean, it would now be called a miscellany. So the sort of metaphor we might use now is something like a sort of smorgasbord of different kinds of story. It's designed for people with not so much time, who want to pick up for half an hour, put it down, have variety. So she, in naming her work, Poikila, she's actually signalling that that's how she wants it. The beauty of it is that. And that's the other thing Photius says. He says she not only called it Poikila, but it was, he said, in simple Greek. Now, he says that slightly derisively. He said, as is suitable to a woman. But what if it wasn't that she just only spoke and thought in simple terms? What if she had a very particular audience in mind? What if she had a 12-year-old daughter who she wanted to educate and introduce to the delights of reading? I actually think this is a deliberate artifice. I think it's an artful simplicity, and that's got to be seen as part of the way she thought and careful consideration of her prospective audience.
The writer Photius says she originally came from Egypt. Epidaurus, the city where she lived, was something of a backwater. She would have had a fairly peaceful time there, but it was also home to a big shrine to Asclepius, the god of healing. What this meant was that a lot of people would have been coming through the town in search of the god's blessings, and probably to see a range of other healers who would have set up shop there. Think of Regency Bath, or a sanatorium in Switzerland in the 19th century, where wealthy people would come to take the waters, try to get better from their tuberculosis or pneumonia. If you'd lived near there, you'd get a range of very interesting people passing through the town, perhaps from all over the ancient world. If you were a wealthy person in that town, you'd invite the pick of the visitors. Some of them well-read, some of them famous, some of them with gossipy stories about interesting people they knew.
Epidaurus was a very cosmopolitan town. It's on the east coast of the Peloponnese. It's very close to other major city-states like Corinth and Athens. So she's very well placed indeed to be on top of the latest in the literary world. Photius implies that she received many visitors, and I think that may have been one of her sources of information. They'll have told her about a new book that's floating around, and she will have then been able to order a papyrus of it to add to her personal library.
She writes about Thales, the first and greatest natural scientist in ancient Greece. she notes that he was the first to inscribe a right-angled triangle in a circle, whereupon he sacrificed an ox.
That adds nothing to the intellectual. We don't get any more about what on earth he inferred or deduced from this triangle, but we've got this picture of this very smug guy who's so pleased with himself at doing this geometric trip that he goes out and sacrifices a whole ox. Now, sacrificing a whole ox is a very expensive thing to do. She's saying he's a bit vain or a bit self-aggrandizing. I think that she had a nose for the interesting anecdote about rather eccentric figures, because philosophers tend to be slightly odd and unconventional, but attracting anecdotes that are very readable and amusing and entertaining to read as well as informative.
As well as the historical commentaries, we know that she wrote eclectically. 3 volumes on the work of a doctor in the Persian court, a book called On Controversies, and another one called Peri-Aphrodisian, which could have been about anything to do with Aphrodite, from love and sex to romance. That's a searching mind, fascinated by everything.
Most of our writers from antiquity who write on anything to do with philosophy or history are attached in some way to one of the great universities. They'll have gone to Athens or they'll have gone to Cyprus to gatherings of other thinkers. She didn't. She lived in her family home with her husband. She wrote probably for a living. She will have made a bit of money out of it, and probably just out of personal interest. She must have been born into a relatively well-to-do family, because there's absolutely no chance that girls lower down the social scale, even in free houses, would have had access to that kind of library and literary culture if she wasn't. Nor would she have had time. What she seems to have managed not to have to do was any housework. She'll have had 5 or 6 domestic slaves who would have looked after absolutely all aspects of meals and washing and laundry and the horses and all the rest of it. There's no chance of her having been able to sustain this kind of literary career without that. I think she spent the time when other ladies would have been weaving textiles, weaving texts.
It is hard to try to get to know someone from just the few traces they left behind, but I think one can imagine her a little bit. She's a wealthy woman who's been married for 13 years. She's always invited the most interesting people in her interesting town for dinner. She enjoys hearing their stories just as they happened. She talks about reading books, but she wasn't attached to the Academy or the Great Library of Alexandria. She probably asked each of her guests if they had any books with them that she was happy of. She had almost certainly got married very young to a man who must have taken a lot of pleasure in her intellect and her interest in the world. He must have helped her meet fascinating people with stories to share. She was someone who thought by talking over dinner and by juxtaposing stories on topics that intrigued her. She collected and she sorted in a way that brought together very different stories in ways that made sense to her.
When I read this kind of material coming out of the pens of women in antiquity, I feel a combination of things. I feel overwhelming frustration that we haven't got more. Overwhelming frustration. I want to scream at whichever Byzantine scribes didn't think it was worth copying out so that we got it in the Renaissance. But I also feel I've got a foremother. I feel kind of validated. I can tell you that being a student in the early 1980s confronted me with very many situations where I was the only woman and humour was the only escape. It validates me. It means I've got a picture in my mind I can hang up besides Plato and Aristotle and Thucydides and Herodotus. There were women like me. We just don't get to hear about them.
Her books existed in a somewhat complete form when Photius read them in 800 CE. They were good enough for very serious historians like Diogenes Laertius to treat them as authoritative. Their writing shimmered. What happened to those books? Those volumes of dappled writing, preserving all those human stories told by guests around a wealthy couple's dinner table in a spa town in Greece. Those sparkling books, probably burned. Things happen in war. Good things get destroyed. You can imagine Pamphyla's work as an ancient building that once stood glorious and whole, but it's now gone. It was broken up into stones, which are now in hundreds of other houses. And we say to ourselves, which figures from history would we like to invite to dinner? I think Pamphila is somewhere in there, hosting a well-laden table in her happy home, coaxing her interesting guests to remember and tell their best stories, weaving them into a tapestry, juxtaposing different time periods, different countries and continents, dappled, brightly coloured, warm, human. Discover the surprising ways some trailblazers found their best ideas by visiting the BBC Human Intelligence programme page and following the link to the Open University.
Human Intelligence is presented by Naomi Alderman and produced in Bristol. It is a BBC Studios audio production for Radio 4. What can a DNA test reveal about the special bond between twin sisters? We'll be taking a closer look at the gift, which is here after the news.
We're not getting the waterfalls, we're not getting as many otters, we're not getting the swans that used to come on this island here.
What's happened to our rivers?
It's like sewage water, isn't it?
I'm Kate Lamble, and in a new 10-part series, I'll be hearing how two neighbours exposed a malodorous scandal and took on those responsible.
You can't do this legitimately, can you?
Investigating a centuries-old battle between public good and private profit.
It's not right.
Rinsed on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds, starting next Monday to Friday at 1:45.
BBC News at 9 o'clock. The UK Health Security Agency says 2 British people are self-isolating at home after returning from a cruise ship affected by an outbreak of hantavirus. They left the ship at the island of St Helena and flew back to the UK via Johannesburg. The agency says they have no symptoms. Earlier, 3 people suspected of having the virus were removed from the Hondias and taken to the Netherlands. Dr. Isabella Eckler from Geneva University Hospital says this is a very different situation to COVID.
We don't really think this is something that easily spreads through the air, so you really have to be close to a sick person. It's very different to COVID or other respiratory viruses, and I would not be concerned about a big outbreak or an epidemic or even a pandemic. I think the risk here is to have several clusters of people who were in contact with each other.
The Israeli military has carried out its first strike on the Lebanese capital Beirut since the start of a ceasefire last month. The target was a senior Hezbollah commander from the group's Radwan Special Forces unit. 2 people have been arrested in connection with a BBC investigation which found that some immigration advisors were helping asylum seekers to pretend to be gay to help their case to stay in the UK. A Home Office source said a woman in her late 40s was arrested under Immigration and Asylum Act, while a man in his early 20s was arrested on suspicion of fraud. The company that bought WH Smith's high street stores says it could close up to a third of its branches, or about 150 shops. They were purchased by Medela Capital last year. Hundreds of jobs are at risk, but the company said the proposal was an essential part of its turnaround plan. The media tycoon and founder of CNN, Ted Turner, has died at the age of 87. The world's first 24-hour TV news channel was launched in 1980, and it revolutionised broadcasting. BBC News.
Now, Radio 4, we give them for birthday and Christmas presents. We take them without much thought, but they can take us to truly extraordinary places. Jenny Kleeman is back with more astonishing truths that unravel when people take at-home DNA tests. And tonight, the special bond between 2 twin sisters is tested in an almost inconceivable way in the first episode in the new series of The Gift.
First of all, happy birthday. Thank you very much. Thank you. 49, years young.
It's Michelle's birthday today, and Lavinia's too. They're twins.
What's it like sharing a birthday with your sister? It's special. It definitely is special. It's special to me anyway. I like being a twin. I think it defines who I am. It's amazing to have a twin and have kind of a built-in friend forever. And I think I've been really blessed to go through this journey with someone else.
I've got sisters.
but I can't begin to imagine what the bond between twins must be like.
I'm so sensitive to Michelle, not only because she's my twin and the love that I have for her, but because I'm very aware of what we both went through growing up. There is an element of me that's always wanted to be protective of her.
But when Michelle takes a DNA test, it sets in motion a chain of events that will test their bond in an almost inconceivable way.
Life hurts sometimes, but sometimes it has to hurt for you to get to the truth. And I'd rather learn a horrible truth than live a lie.
It's the perfect gift for the person who already has everything. It promises to tell you who you really are and how you're connected to the world.
It is a gift. And sometimes when you open your present, it's not something you're expecting. And it might be something that sits on your, bathroom shelf. And sometimes it takes a bit of time to realize that the gift is actually something you can use.
A present that will reveal your genetic past, but could also disrupt your future.
I was intrigued. What am I going to find out? What is it going to reveal?
In the gift, I've always looked at the extraordinary truths that can unravel when people take at-home DNA tests like Ancestry and 23andMe.
I was just more interested to find out who I could be connected to, but I wasn't thinking it would open up a can of worms.
In this third series, I'm asking what it truly means to belong after genealogy, technology, and identity collide.
I just didn't want it. I didn't want it. I didn't want this reality.
Families reconnected and ruptured, identities uprooted, long-buried secrets brought to light. The global DNA database keeps expanding. How do we find our place in it?
Just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. She lied to me about something that is very, very important. It has created a divide between my twin and I, and I'm so sorry for that.
I'm Jenny Kleeman, and from BBC Radio 4, this is Series 3 of The Gift. Episode 1, Twins.
I wanted to go to a cabaret show, but Michelle was like, we could just have a cup of tea and cake. A cup of tea and cake, really, on our birthday. Could do that anytime, So I suppose I'm the exuberant twin.
Lavinia and Michelle are twins, but they aren't identical. They look different, and they seem different too. Lavinia, the outgoing one, doesn't have kids. She's wearing a headscarf as she speaks to me from her home in South London. Michelle, who lives nearby, is more of an introvert. She's got a teenage son. Tumbling curls frame her face. Not long ago, they had a bit of a falling out, Michelle says.
We've always struggled with birthdays because she's outgoing, extrovert, and always wants to do something. And I don't. I just want to eat a Victoria sponge cake with a candle on and have a glass of Prosecco and be at home and be a homebod. And this year, because we've had an argument, the silver lining is that I get to do exactly what I want to do on my birthday, which is nearly nothing.
You will know that people are fascinated by twins and the connection that they have with each other. Do you feel that you have a special connection?
So, first off, there's a little bit of magic there. I can feel when she's upset, and she can feel when I'm upset, and vice versa, and there's a lot of synergy there.
Lavinia's felt it too.
There were times when she, spilt hot water, and I felt it. Do you get what I mean? But I didn't know it had happened, on her leg, and then I felt it. So you could say twins can be similar, but you could also say twins can be polar opposites. And so I feel like Michelle and I have kind of followed each other through life in the sense of I lived in Barcelona when I was 24, 25. And then not long after that, Michelle moved abroad to Iceland. So I moved to a hot country. She moved to a cold country, but we still moved abroad, more or less in the same time frame, We both started businesses. I started my business first and then she started. I moved out of home and got my own place. She moved out not long after. Do you get what I mean? So I do feel like we do things that are on a parallel but opposite sort of thing.
Lavinia, tell me, what was your life like growing up?
I will always say I look on the bright side of life and the positives. But the reality was that it was difficult.
Their mother was only 19 when she gave birth to her twins, Michelle tells me.
My mother would be classed today as a vulnerable young adult when she had us. And so we lived with my mother's best friend's mother that we called Grandma. And we lived with her from the age of around 4.5 until we were around 9. And that was a difficult time because sometimes when you're not actually blood relatives, you're not always prioritized.
You say your mother would have been classed as a vulnerable adult. Are you happy to share what made her vulnerable?
My mother grew up in a household, Windrush generation. She was born in Jamaica. She came to England when she was 5 and suffered abuse at the hands of her mum's stepfather. And so my mother was in and out of foster care and children's homes throughout her childhood because it wasn't safe for her to be at home. And then having 2 babies at the age of 19, I can't imagine that was a good time for her.
And from what you're saying, it sounds like when you were growing up, there wasn't a father in your life.
So no, we had some inkling of a guy called James, but we just didn't know him, and he wasn't in our lives at the time. So my mum always was very ambitious, very, wanting to go to college and get an education, and she did.
When Lavinia and Michelle were around 5 years old, their mum got a place to study at university in London. That's when she left them in Nottingham with the woman they called Grandma.
I had a teddy bear. We didn't have a lot of toys growing up, and I had thrown the teddy bear into the moving van because I thought if the teddy bear's there, then I'm going with my mum. And obviously we didn't go with our mum. I missed my mum terribly. Grandma was quite strict, not very emotional, not very cuddly, and the one constant that I had just growing up was Michelle. My twin sister missed my mother terribly. She was sick with missing my mother when my mum went off to university. I wasn't disturbed by it, and I just thought, it's okay. I just think I had that kind of personality where I was able to detach from this whole kind of mummy thing. And I kind of, at that time, took on the mantle, although my sister sees it differently, of kind of taking care of my sister. And it was just kind of her and I against the world. And I didn't ever class the lady that was looking after us as Grandma, nor did I ever love her, because she wasn't my grandma, and I was fine. I had my sister.
You had your sister, so having a twin was a comfort in that situation.
Absolutely. My twin sister makes me who I am. I didn't feel whole without Michelle. And she was just a source of comfort and warmth. And when I say warmth, I mean like actual physical warmth. Sometimes we'd be cold and we'd have to cuddle together to keep warm, especially at night time in the bed. She was just there. She was just there. Always there. Yeah.
And as you got older, did you find that you could talk to your mum? Did you come close to your mum?
No. Physically and emotionally, she was always out of reach.
By the time the twins were around 10 years old, their mum had started a new relationship and given birth to another daughter. She sent for Lavinia and Michelle, who came to join their mum, her new partner, and their baby half-sister in London.
That was kind of a happy time because Mummy brought us back into the fold and she was in a relationship and she seemed happy, and it was the first semblance of a kind of almost with Mummy, happy family. That didn't last very long, but for that moment it seemed like there was a future there.
How long did you all live together then?
So basically Mummy's objective was to stay with my younger sister's father, and he point blank refused to raise anyone else's children. So Mummy's objective was to get us to go anywhere except for be in the house. And so she paid for us to board at a house which was actually one of her old foster homes. Mum used to pay them to allow us to lodge at the house, and then we went to the school in the countryside. So we did that for about 1.5 years when we were around 12. I remember calling my mum one time because I missed her. She was just really irate with me, like, why are you calling me?
And I remember just feeling so rejected. I just didn't understand. I'm calling you because I miss you, She was always just angry with us, telling us off, dismissing us, not having any time for us. So the dynamic was, she was like a big sister to me and Michelle. That was her parenting role. Like, I'm doing this because I have to, not because I want to.
Lavinia, what did she tell you about being pregnant with you and Michelle and the birth?
I know that she was alone. She wasn't supported. It was a very uncomfortable and difficult pregnancy from what I understand. And then when we were born, I was supposed to be born first, but the umbilical cord, I think, was wrapped around Michelle's neck. And so she was pulled out first, and then I was pulled out. And from what it seems, I took all the nutrients because I was like a fat, healthy baby. Michelle was not so much.
It was a very traumatic time for Mummy, but I don't know anything really about that bit after. She just used to say that I was black and long, and Lavinia was kind of cutesy and chubby with hair.
Imagine what they were like when they were tiny.
Do you have pictures of yourself when you were very little? I'm noticing on the shelf behind you where the CDs are. Is that you and Lavinia in that picture?
That is.
Look at you guys.
I've only ever seen 3 pictures of us as under 5-year-olds. So there's probably about, in existence, 12 pictures of us in total of our whole life up to the age of when we could take pictures of ourselves.
So little was certain when they were growing up. All they knew for sure was that they had each other. As the years passed, Michelle wanted firm answers. How did you come to take a DNA test?
So my mother unfortunately passed away 4 years ago from early onset dementia. And I used to ask her before she became unwell, so that was 10 years prior to that. Well, in fact, all the way through our childhood, when Lavinia and I were able to question our parentage, they say, Mummy, are you sure James is our dad? Is James our dad? And Mummy, yes, he's your father. He's your father. We met him when we were around 15. Lavinia instigated a search and found him.
After he'd been absent from their lives for years, the twins finally had a dad. And for a brief time, Lavinia says, James made an effort for them.
I remember him coming to a couple of school plays, and I remember him doing an 18th birthday for me and Michelle, which was one of the worst birthdays of my life. It just was awkward. There was just an awkwardness,
When you saw him, did you recognise yourself in him?
I kind of did, but it's interesting because I was a cousin, a nephew of his, and was talking, and he said in the family they don't think that you're his. But I never heard that from his mouth. And I remember asking my mum many times, is he ours? I mean, like, is he really our dad? And she would say, yes, he's your dad. You walk like him. You walk just like him, and you got a nose like him. You look like... And I'd be like, okay, that's who our dad is.
I had doubts. I had deep down doubts about him. So when Mummy became unwell and wasn't able to kind of formulate any sensible kind of responses to my questions, I saw a picture of James, and this was probably about 6 years ago, and I hadn't seen him for a very long time. I hadn't seen a photograph of him